유튜브 여러분 안녕하세요. 유아 7 카복입니다. 드디어 곧 시작되는 2951년 시티즌콘 딱 2분 40초 남아있는 상황인데요. 여러분 이 영상은 이제 우리나라 시간으로 미드나이트 00시에 시작해서 할로 감사합니다. 오후 7 아침 8시에 끝날 예정이에요. 스타파운드 127님 팔로우 감사합니다. 오후 7 본 영상 제가 리뷰한 영상은 전체 리뷰, 전체 풀 업로드가 아마 유튜브에 올라갈 예정이고요. 올라가고 나가지고 편집본은 좀 다듬는 거는 시간이 좀 걸릴 것 같아요. 왜냐면 일단은 8시간이 되니까 8시간짜리를 저 혼자서 편집해야 됩니다, 여러분. 제 편집자가 있는 게 아니기 때문에 시간이 좀 걸릴 것 같고 오늘 이야기 들으면서 최대한 들리는 거 이야기 그대로 한글말로 번역해서 이야기를 해줄 텐데 제가 놓치는 부분이 있을 수도 있으니까 여러분들도 시청자분들도 같이 함께 뭐 이 부분 이렇게 들렸어요라고 저한테 얘기해 주시면 좋습니다. 자, 얼마든지 의견 환영하고요. 지금은 이제 팬 영상들이 나오고 있어요.
This is Starship Gemini on a humanitarian mission.
We've been engaged by Ninetales pirates.
세븐
Assistance is needed.
어디요?
Red alert. Battle stations.
Right along boys. Power down, and we'll let you leave with your lives.
Give us what we want, and we'll leave you alone.
Captain, we have support inbound.
오, 잘 찍었다. 컨터 뭐 이거 되죠?
Hello, Gemini. Looks like you could use a
아, 내가 본 것 같은데.
We'll handle these pirates, scum.
I can't get enough, man. Son of a bitch.
Locked on. Last one.
두두 1분 남았습니다. 50 세컨 하이프 50초 하이프 자 얼마 안 남았습니다. 이제 크리스 로봇 저 얼굴이 바로 딱 되려나? 어떻게 되려나? 헤이 렛츠 고 베이비 우 두두두두두두두두두두두두 크리스 로봇 송환까지 20초 협곡에 크리스 로봇가 소환됩니다. 비비비비비비빙 소환되고 있어. 두두두두두두두두 아니 롤드컵을 왜 봐? 시티즌콘이 있는데 3 2 1 빠라 야 직발라요
Digital CitizenCon 2951. So it's really, really good to be back in front of the camera and talking to all of you out there. I wish it was in person. As you know, we have been doing CitizenCons for a long time, and last year was the last year we didn't do it because of the pandemic. And we didn't want to go
작년에 팬데믹 때 못했다 그러고요.
having
볼륨 좀 작은데?
CitizenCon, but we felt like this year it was a bit too close to get back to do it in person with all the issues
마이크
with
좀 왜 이래?
travel, and we're doing it virtually and digital this year, and I'm hoping next year we'll get to do it in person. So it's been very challenging for all of us. There's about
오프닝
20
영상입니다.
of us have all been working from home.
크리스 형 왜 이렇게 젊어졌지
But,
근데?
you know, a silver lining to that cloud, which is a lot more of you have had more time to play Star Citizen and give us feedback and get engaged. I mean, we, compared to where we were in the last time we had a physical CitizenCon in 2019, the number of
시청자
daily
언급
players that
금지
we have in
그만하십시오,
Star
이제.
Citizen is on average 2 to 3 times more than we had back in 2019, which is fantastic. 2020 was a big year of expansion.
2020년은 아주 중요한 해였대요. 중요한 해였는데 패치를 그따구로 했어.
And we're hoping with some of the features that we're working on, like server meshing, we're working on a bunch of optimizations, quality of life, and maturing, you know, some of the gameplay loops that you're starting to see happen. I mean, we've got some stuff coming up like Death of a Spaceman, where the first part of it, the medical gameplay, is going to be there, and also the beginning of physical inventory with the personal inventory. It's not fully
3.1로 얘기하고 있죠.
two
피지컬
major
인벤토리
game
메디컬.
changes that are coming very shortly. In fact, they're coming with 350.
할로
and
감사합니다.
there's a lot of other things.
오치님 팔로우 감사합니다.
Just beyond that, we're going to continue that momentum, and you know, more and more people will be discovering Star Citizen, and more you will be spending more hours playing it and having fun, giving us great feedback, and we're inevitably inching towards the finish line of
생방이야.
having
녹화에서
something that we can say,
보여준다.
yep, this is the definitive experience for you guys. And so I'm really excited by that.
나도 excited.
But let's get back to today.
Okay.
And today is about Digital CitizenCon, and we've got some really great stuff to show you. The first of that is going to be led off by Todd Pappy with Ian Leland and David Haddock. And I don't want to spoil it. There's some really great stuff. It's going to use a combination of some features that are coming very soon and some features and content that is a little further down the road. But it's going to give you a taste of life to come.
이제 라이프 관련된 이제 바로 발표를 진행하겠다고 하는 거죠. 시티즌콘 2051 라이프 인 발프 이제 시작됩니다. 첫 방송입니다. 자, 첫 주제 라이프 인 발프 우주의 생명체 생명들이라는 말입니다. 스탠턴 요거 볼륨 나가면 안 되는데 여러분 안 나가고 있는 거예요 볼륨. 우리가 다음 플래닛에 뭘 기대할 수 있을까요? 와딘 비어다 현재 우주 태양계 벽 밖에 뭐가 있을까요? 호스팅 감사합니다. 원지 오빠님 호스팅 감사합니다. 7명 감사합니다. 어서오세요. 안 들린다고? 소리가? 뭔 소리가 안 들려요? 내 목소리가 안 들려요? 영상 소리가 안 들려요? 들려요? 들리는 사람 보고 안 들리는 사람 개웃기네. To new beginning 새로운 시작을 위해서 뭐야 설마 점프 저 뭐야 방금 뭐야 저 뭐야 왜 풀인 줄 알았네. 깜짝 놀랐네 생긴 거. 뭐야 이거 점프 게이트야? 점프 게이트야? 점프 게이트야? 설마 점프 게이트 나오나요? 파이로 시스템 점프 게이트 나오나요? 하나요? 근데 파이로 여기가 파이로인 것 같은데 근데? 점프 게이트 타이프 파이로 뭐라는 거야? 저 면접 못 봐가지고.
Hi, I'm Todd Pappy, Star Citizen Live Game
안녕하세요.
Director.
Hi, I'm Ian. I'm the art director for Star Citizen.
다이렉트 아저씨들 다 나왔어.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm the narrative director at
다이렉트
Star
아저씨 이제 다 나왔네.
Citizen. So finally, we're
감독 아저씨
saying
다 나왔어.
goodbye to Stanton. It's quite precious to us. We've been talking about it. We've been looking at it. We've been living there for quite a long time.
오랫동안 스탠드 시스템에
Now it's
머물렀다.
time to, move the conversation on. Start to look at something new. Now it's changed.
이제 새로운
slightly.
태양계를 얘기할 때가 되지
Aside from
않았냐라고
what
하고
we saw,
있어요.
a little while ago. One of the things that was quite important for Chris is he wanted that feeling of something that was quite wondrous, something that was quite amazing. It's not dark, it's not mysterious, it's not hostile, but it's more, like I said, wondrous.
와,
So when
파이로에
we
저런
started
특성이
looking
있어?
at Pyro, and we had to start looking at how the jump points work.
근데 파이로
when
얘기에
we're
대한 어떤 점프
traveling
포인트가
from
어떻게
Stanton to Pyro
작동하는지부터
or
얘기를
Pyro Stanton,
시작했고요.
and thinking about border security and with the infrastructure that's needed there. What's the lore? Just because on one side it's very lawless versus the other side is dealing with the UEE. So we needed to go through and really think about how this was working, and then also with the jump points, how smugglers
방송 꽉 차게 할 수
with the
있는데요.
secondary and
방송했다
tertiary
다시 틀어야
routes
돼요.
that would lead
다시
into
방송
the
다시 켜야
main
돼요.
jump point and then funnel out.
Yeah, we kind of call it internally. We kind of call it the Swiss cheese approach.
할 수 있는데
There's sort of
조금
the
늦었다.
main entrance that you would go through on Stanton, which would
나중에
be the
쉬는
sort
시간
of
되면
have
할게요.
the infrastructure that you had mentioned, the security and stuff like that. But the possibility that there would be alternate ways to kind of get in to bypass that, so which would be beneficial knowledge for smugglers or criminals who are trying to get in under the radar.
Yeah.
And also, it was you know, if there's a lot of infrastructure around it, it sort of created this impression that that infrastructure was responsible for the jump point. When in reality, it's a
많은
naturally occurring thing.
준비들이 점프 포인트에
It's an
준비가
interesting
돼야
balance of
된다
what
이런
makes
얘기를
it
하고
seem like
있고
this is a checkpoint, but at the same time, it's something that the ships are creating, not the structures.
So before we go too much further into the Pyro system, let's take a deep dive into the op process with Jake Dunlap, and he's going to be taking us through the authoring process for the Stanton and Pyro jump points.
점프 포인트부터 이야기를 하기 때문입니다. 파이로에 대해서 더 나가기 전에. From the Stanton to Pyro jump point.
Bringing jump points to the verse has been an interesting journey as we've been designing a new element in our game. We've put a lot of time into creating two solid examples of different types of jump points.
다양한
You'll
점프 포인트를
eventually see
만들려고
all
준비를 하고
around
있었고
verse. One in Stanton and one in
하나는
Pyro.
스탠턴에 있는 거고 하나는
We've
파이로에
been
있는 거고
continuing to use Houdini as the tool to create these gas clouds.
이걸
The
가스 클라우드를
setup we
만들어서
have for them
점프
is a
저기 이게
parent gas
가운데 있는 게
cloud and a
점프
child
포인트네.
gas cloud.
반짝이는 게.
The parent is mainly used as an establishing shot when you arrive in your ship from quantum travel, while the child is used as the main gameplay environment and is placed inside the parent.
저렇게 나가서 점프
The
게이트로
child
가는
also
거야?
has a reasonable
반짝반짝거리는 거
scale,
봐.
which keeps your average ship speed
와,
in
눈이
mind.
구름이
These things
기둥처럼 올라가
aren't
있어.
nearly the size of real nebula. If you
눈이
choose.
아니구나, 눈이래.
But by
성운이.
no means are the jump points small. Here's an example of a Pyro jump point next to Microtech.
뭐야 이거? 이거 뭐야?
To explain the process a bit more, we create the parent
우리-
at a large scale,
우리가 라지
then cut
스케일에서
out a small box in the center of it. Inside the
만드는
small box,
점프 게이트
we gather
관련된
the volume
메커니즘을
data from the
만드는
parent,
법을 얘기
upres
설명하고
that,
있어요.
and then add details. The details will be different depending on what type of gas cloud you want,
가스 클라우드
and if
만드는
you
것도
want to easily
같이
fly
이야기하고
through it
있네요.
or not. We usually spend time investigating different designs for the gas clouds, but with the Stanton jump point, the work had
오,
already
저
been started
가운데
and
약간
used in
약간
the 2019
뭔가
SitizenCon demo.
빛이 빛나는 게 존나
We just had
멋있는데.
to go through, clean up the Houdini
와,
file,
점프 게이트
inject
주변에
with a couple
이게
of extra tweaks along the way.
토네이도처럼 모이는 거
Some of the
봐,
tweaks we
성운들.
made to the parent
와,
were
존나
making it
멋있다,
feel
진짜.
like more of a
와.
structurally sound rotating disc. This was to make
와,
it feel
개멋있다.
like a safe and well-used jump point. The child gas cloud here was changed more dramatically. It used to have
와,
a
저
bunch of
게임에서
dark
보면
clouds
막
around it.
팬티 벗고
We
게임해야겠다.
felt that
와,
it was feeling a
지리겠다.
little bit too closed in, so we spent time morphing the magnetic lines in the center to create a really interesting horizontal, flowing, relaxing composition to visually show you that Stanton itself is generally a safe place at first glance. The parent gas cloud for Pyro was created with the same process as the Stanton parent,
생명체 같아.
but we
성운.
changed the shape of the cloud into something more menacing and violent.
근데 왜
We wanted
성운부터
the
보여줘?
reveal of
아,
Pyro
말
to
다
be
보자.
a clear
조용히
warning of
봅시다.
what you should be expecting throughout the entire system. So we made it very closed in, dense, and very active. We did make it a small challenge to traverse
아니,
the
발표할 거
child,
많습니다. 2시간
something
동안
that
하는데
won't take
뭐가
too
나올 거야?
long, but should be something to consider when traveling through. Something that helped really quickly create a fun traversal route was creating a white box play area in engine out of solid geometry and flying around it right away.
오, 뭐야? 점프 게이트 내부 텍스처 안 입힌 내부인가
After
보다.
we were happy with the route, we exported the geometry to use in Houdini, where we converted it to a volume and combined it with the upresed area of the parent to export that out as the child cloud.
오우, 씨발. 존나 멋있는데요.
We wanted to make sure that these systems feel very different from each other. Some ways in
그러니까
which we
다양한
did
사운드를
this
같이
was
만들고
by
있네.
the shape of the
와,
jump
저
points.
조금 같아요.
As I
정나무
mentioned
같아요.
before, Stanton feels very clean, put together, and generally safe with the disc-like form that it has. But Pyro feels like it's more violent, distressed, and this shows in its form. The comparison is shown well in both
형,
of
내가
the child
색깔이 좋은
clouds.
이유가 있어.
In the Stanton child cloud, we have nice long strands of the magnetic waves that
저런
encapsulate the
데를
jump point.
캐럭이라든지
that
자기
feel
함선을
harmonious,
가지고
beautiful, and free.
퀀텀 타고 도착을
Whereas in the
해서
Pyro
저
cloud,
구름을
it
뚫고
shows
들어가서
almost the opposite.
앞에 점프
The
게이트에
walls feel
점프를
like
타는
they're closing in on you,
진-
moving in unpredictable ways, completely unstable. Your ship could enter into a wall and disappear within a second. Lighting also plays a big role in how we feel about these spaces. You can see these are dramatically different areas in the mood,
소팅
tone,
감사합니다. 오,
lighting.
세버리님 방송
So that's a
수고하셨습니다.
brief
카이님
look at jump
방송하셨네.
points.
카이님 방송
They've
수고하셨습니다.
evolved quite a
소팅
bit since
감사합니다.
the
오,
last
세버.
time you saw them. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks, Jake. So one of the things that players will first probably come across when they come into the Pyro system is
파이로 처음 나왔을 때
the
나올 만한
space
게
station. You know, it was discovered a long time
이제
ago. It was sort of
스테이션이라
being done
스페이스
inhabitable
스테이션부터
because
아웃로우
it was just
스페이스
too
스테이션
dangerous with that
불법
various
스테이션이라는
flares
말이에요,
that are
여러분.
going on. So they kind of utilize the system for resources, and then when they kind of
이게 약간 컨셉이 주변에 있는 뭐 자네들 같은 리소스를 이용해서 만든
sort of older
스테이션 컨셉이에요.
infrastructure built to sustain kind of the mining activities and the gas harvesting and stuff like that, but you know that they just basically left, and then
약간 부셔져 있다 스테이션이, 그죠? 스테이션이 조금씩 부셔져 있네. 불법 스테이션 느낌 나게.
Whatever, and start to kind of take over what was left behind.
Which gives us some unique gameplay comparatively
이건 뭐야?
to Stanton and the space stations there. So with Pyro, since they're in such disrepair, some of them are inhabited, some
오,
of them
신기해.
are
스테이션
completely
컨셉들이다.
abandoned. And then
와,
so
존나
players can
멋있는데,
go
우주
and
스테이션.
explore. They can go and see what's happening
파이로
there.
우주 스테이션 컨셉들이었나?
Whether it's been hit by an asteroid,
뭐
or if
처운
it's, there was some
쳐가지고
sort of
약간
conflict there before.
긁어진 느낌의 스토리인가
But you'll
봐요.
be able to go and explore the different
이거
depths,
존나
and
아무나
be
우주
able
스테이션
to,
느낌이 납니다.
go
들어가면
and meet
데드
people,
스페이스 찍어야 될 것
meet the
같은데?
frontier
이거
lifestyle,
존나
enjoy it.
존나 지인데?
Okay, so before we go to the inside of the stations, we're going to jump now to Eric, and he's going to go in a bit more detail the concept development process taken when looking at the exteriors.
파이로에서
Hi, I'm Eric Gagnon, principal
아웃로우
concept
스페이스
artist in
스테이션의
Star
외관을
The goal of that
디자인한
initial
친구랍니다.
step of sketch development is to create something not invited, dangerous, damaged by asteroids.
컨셉의 중요한 건 데인저러스, 위험해 보이고, 그리고 데미지를 상처나는 게 파이로 시스템의 컨셉이라네.
Decrepit, lawless, no security force here. Approach at your own risk. Industrial look.
여러분 참고로 파이로 시스템은 파이로 태양기 자체가 유이문의 관리에 없기 때문에 인공위성 마크 자체가 없어요. 즉 말은 뭐냐면 파이로 시스템 한 번에 소환했는데 차로 가는 도중에 한 번 다 터져가지고 아예 타지 못할 수도 있다.
And focus on the shape only.
아, 여러 컨셉이
try
있네.
to play with a touch of color to define more of the commercial port platform. We try different schemes to remind
완전
us
무법
of the whole
태양이어가지고
look we arrested
언제 어디서나 PVP가 가능해.
Adding a touch of light in some context around the sketch allows to see the scale of thing and properly view the silhouette. We expand on the idea to play with the mechanism and functionality. This is the color sketches
이건 약간
of the asteroid
카고 연결하는 창 쪽의 디자인인가 봐요.
We can clearly feel the arrival of the asteroids and the
오, 옆에 소행성이랑 선이 연결돼 있어. 오, 소행성 끌어당겨.
We also need some
존나 신기하네.
technicals to properly
컨셉
showcase the
존나
size
신기하네.
and scale of it. With all those elements in place, we can now build a nice plate of the entire concept for the asteroids.
엔타로 크리스 로봇.
The shantytown module habitation is a nice idea to add a kind of small city on the outskirts of the space station. So here I sketched those shapes to create something very modular.
모듈
From the
관련된 것도
grayscale, it's pretty easy to do a
스케치했다고
color
하네요.
pass.
약간 디자인 자체가 전반적으로 약간 낡아 보이는 거, 약간 재활용하는 느낌, 그런 느낌으로.
We can easily see how cool the area is going to be. Another angle shot here is pretty nice too.
오, 신기하네. 이렇게 둥둥 떠 있나? 몰라, 어떻게 진짜 나와봐야 알지만.
Contrast is interesting.
근데 이건 컨셉 디자인이고 여러분 이게 실제로 구현되는 게 어떻게 구현되는지 또 마지막에 보여줄 것 같은데 아까 보니까 살짝 보였는데.
To properly illustrate it. Now we have a nice board of this sketch phase. We apply the same process here for the commercial port platform.
오.
The black and white sketches are a good
반전으로 5년 뒤에 나옵니다, 여러분. 그러면 바로 폭동이지, 씨발. 나 지금 채팅창에다 바로 씨발놈들이라고 한글로 친다, 내가.
A quick side view plan here is necessary to well build this design. We fill the form and the ratio and the size of what we want to achieve.
모음 처리가 안 되지 않을까요?
And of course, we create a color sketch to see what it could be. We see the industrial look and some potential details to better define and deep dive into. For those, we have a deeper design exploration of this industrial area.
약간 산업 지역 같은 거 디자인하는 것도 보여주고 있습니다 지금.
And a color touch. Combining
아니요.
2D and 3D
보험
sketches
처리를
really help
했는데
properly
함선이
communicate the
스탠턴에 가
design
있는 거나
intent.
본인 고향
It's a
기지에 가
common
있다던가
technique now,
본인
but
그
it's really
본인이 갖고 있는 개인
efficient to
경락부로
highlight
들어가는
areas
거죠.
of the
그럴 수도
concept.
있어.
Using
그러니까
3D
보험이
is
안
also
된다는 게
very
함선이 안
useful
없어진다는 얘기
for
아니고
level designers
보험
to
처리를
validate
하지만
the size
함선 위치가
and shape
내가 원래 있는
of
위치로 안
things
온다.
when
파이로 시스템에 안 올
creating
수도
the
있다.
environment
근데
in-game.
당장 파이로가 구현되면
Let's talk about the big
자기 위치로
repair
보험을 해주긴
machinery
해줄 거예요.
ID.
근데
This machine
결론적으로
could be used to
그
repair
나중에
surfaces
정발될 쯤의
damaged
이야기지만
by
보험이란
asteroids.
개념은
It's
본인이
far
있는
from
위치에
the
자동으로
AV
함선이
machinery
와주는
that
개념은
we
아닐
see
거예요.
in mining.
어느 지역에
Nice to see
지정된
the
지역이라든지
overall head-on
개인의
ideas
그 거주
brought
구역이
together
있는
on
지역에
a single board.
돌아갈 가능성이
It
높습니다.
gives a great look and makes you want to see the next design step. The mood looks. We also create a mood board from our different shots. This shows how lighting is
와,
used
존나
to set the
디자인
tone
자체가
of the environment
진짜
by
너무
giving
사벽이다.
different
우주
options
스테이션 하나
and color
만들어도
palettes.
얘들은
Finally, we
정말
provide
그
some
뭐랄까
options for paint of
디테일들이
the exterior
아
surfaces.
죽여나갑니다 진짜.
We work from a list of brands and faction that we need to incorporate to the design. We started from the narrative things, worked to build the visual identity of the different brand, exploring different ways to represent them and the environment, stickers, flat surfaces, graffiti, or official paint job. This really brings the sketches alive and set in the universe of Star Citizen. The Outlaw Station are a sample of the Pyro system, and we hope
샘플 오브 파이로
this
시스템을 이제
first
보여주겠다는
exterior
거예요.
concept phase excites you as much as we had fun to create it.
아직 컨셉 페이지라는 건 확실히
Thank you,
알아보고
Eric.
해서.
Looks great.
That's the exterior. So right now we're going to go from the outside and we're going to jump to the interior.
이제 인테리어 관련된 이야기를 하겠답니다. 아울로 스페이스 스테이션에 대해서. 이름이 정해졌나 봐요. 아울로 스페이스 스테이션.
Before we really started exploring anything,
대놓고 그냥 불법
one
우주
of the
스테이션.
core concepts
무법 우주
that we
스테이션.
discussing as a group
불법은
was
아니 무법이지.
the idea of power and the idea of heat. Now we've got like this
내부
big
있네. 자,
interior layout of this, maybe this
여기
whole
마켓
mining
에리아,
station.
사이드 에리아,
How
DM
would they have
룸 뭔지
adapted the
모르겠고,
space? You know,
테마
they
룸,
would have, right, okay, we
엘리베이터
need
이쪽에
power
4개.
here. Okay, that
오,
would
존나 분위기
create
보세요.
heat. So we started thinking about, okay, where would the heat lamps be, and then where would light come from? So just
설마
the
스테이션에 통일되는
principal
거 아니겠지?
concept of
가능성
power
있어 근데.
creating
파이로니까
heat,
가능성
creating
있어.
light. That was
여기
pretty
유저
much the
나쁜 새끼들 다
core
보이겠네.
of the start of the visual development
나도 있는 건가
process.
그러면?
So when we started talking about it from a design side, we needed to make sure that we were covering certain shops.
디자인할 때 제
just
주저했던 건
basic
여러 가지
needs for
상점을
the player.
늘려고 했다.
Everything's bare
와
bones.
존나 야 이게 사이버펑크지 병신
It
같은
used to be a clothing
어떤
store,
회사
now
이용 안
it's
하겠습니다.
a food shop, and so they've converted it. The gangs moved in. You know, it's not what it used to be, and but you see that old skeleton there.
One of the things that definitely we've been talking about with Pyro that we didn't really get to see in Stanton is the idea of the sort of the gang presence. So, that idea that they're the sort of local law in the area. So, you might see gang members coming and shaking down some of these shopkeepers for protection
돈 좀
money,
있냐?
for rent,
톡톡 건드리는 거죠. 야,
type
돈 좀
thing.
있냐? 한푼 못 타고 왔어 너? 너? 890? 야, 너 부자구나. 야, 형 있잖아 저기 라면 한 그릇 사 먹어야 되는데
So
돈 좀 주면 안 되냐?
some
돈
of the
많잖아.
side areas, there were other factors that we had to cover. Habitation, clinics, players need
그냥 그거
a
가져갈 것
place to
같다고요?
sleep, to
아니,
log out, as
이
well as
전자머니잖아요,
players
여러분.
need a way to
30세기입니다.
get themselves healed.
현금을 지폐로 들고 다니는 게
And
아니에요.
we started taking the same
일단 총구를
treatment or
겨누고
similar treatment that we were
나한테
doing
이체
with
하나 해야 돼. 어쩔 수가 없어.
the main
죽이 바로
market
죽이면 안
area,
돼요.
and
그거는 이제
started to
살인마고,
take it into the
살인마고,
house and how they were
강도는
possibly
말로 시작해야
repurposed,
돼.
or the clinics and how those were possibly
그냥 보고
repurposed.
80 가져갈 때,
So,
그거는 방법이.
and just
그런 방법이.
make sure that everything felt cohesive in its raw natural form. In the way that we have the station structured, we haven't let players go into
아니 A팀이 있겠냐고요.
living quarters of where the people that lived at the station would be, or even into the lower
모비
decks
글래스 여러분 눈치 못
where
쳤지만
the power,
여러분들
where the
손가락으로 띡
gravity
누르잖아요.
generators
지문
are.
인식하는 겁니다.
And this is
그리고
where
눈으로
we're gonna
보잖아요.
start introducing
안구 인식
these
같이 하는 걸
areas,
거예요.
and it
라고
opens up
생각합니다.
new opportunities
제
for players to go
뇌피셜입니다.
explore and do new things. But it's also areas that the gang might want to protect.
Yeah, it offers a lot of possibilities for mission content, you know, whether it's actually maybe working for the gang itself or other kind of little small things you could do inside there to really kind of, drive you deep into the bowels of this thing.
Okay, so that's a little look at the insides of the stations, but now we'll jump to Christian, and Christian's going to take us on a little bit of a deeper dive into the concept development process of the inside of the stations.
오, 내부 스테이션에 좀 더 딥하게 보여주겠대요.
Hi, my name is Christian Doretz. I'm a senior concept
artist
on the environment team, and we're going to look at the concept development for the space station a little bit. So first off, we looked
일단은 제일
at
간단하네.
the heat
오,
map.
잠깐만.
So
여기 보세요. 여기
there's
웜이
a lot
적혀
of,
있고 콜드가
more or less
적혀 있어요.
the electricity
우주
is gone,
스테이션이
the heating is
데미지
gone,
입은
and the air,
스테이션이다
the
보니까
oxygen is gone.
따뜻한 곳이 있고
there's pretty
추운
much
곳이 있어.
all of those connected areas.
존나 디테일해.
They are lifeless. in
헬멧,
a way,
우주복
right? So
필수입니다.
you wouldn't settle down somewhere in between those.
오, 존나 디테일합니다.
between those empty corridors.
그리고 지금
We were
방금
trying
이야기하고
to,
들렸는데
sort our
일부
thoughts
지역에는
and get
산소가
them on
없대요.
paper, right? So
우주
we were
스테이션
exploring
내부인데
different
일부 지역에도
ideas
산소가
that we
없대.
on the concept team had in mind. So we were thinking about pathways that the player and the NPC could take. So what would happen? We were thinking about what would happen if all of a sudden one pathway is blocked off or another one will open up, right? So we were thinking about verticality and how the players or the NPCs can traverse all of those interesting areas that are, in the end, pretty ominous, right? So think about, there are some people just screwing off side panels on the wall, or they are screwing off ceiling panels, and you would see all of the maintenance areas behind it. So we'd see a lot of struts, a lot of working areas. There's cables hanging. So
리맥스에도
those were the
병원은
very first
있으니까
sketches where
여기도
we
있긴
could
있을 겁니다.
see what those eventually could evolve into. And we also started then slowly with some loose 3D sketches. So getting everything into 3D, and it's pretty much evolved
와,
over time.
존나
We could
낡았고
talk to the environment guys, and we were asking for
존나
some of the
펑크하고
current rest stops, geo,
내부
and some
존나
of the
암울해 보이고
textures. And then
갑자기
getting
저글링
them,
튀어나와도
into 3D,
오,
just changing up all of
3D
the props,
모델링하는 거
all of
보인다.
the side panels, or all of the whole the environment. So we could, looking back at the references, then convey this feeling. We could introduce more dirt, we could introduce some damaged panels, side panels, and pretty much explore this side area, right? And
복부라고 있네.
the big advantage of this is that we can make the environment how we like. So one thing that we did is like kill all the lights.
맨날 생각하는 거
Because we don't
아니었구나.
need
일을
lighting,
하고
we want to
오,
create our own lighting. And this is what I said earlier. The current rest stops are
분위기
super
보소.
bright. They're family friendly. But now we want to make it ominous. We want to make it dark mood. We
야,
want to
어떤
make it
새끼가
super
우리
dark.
함대원
Players, like,
죽였다는데
always
야,
feeling
저는
kind of in
전투함
danger,
들고 집합,
especially with
파이로
the members in mind, right?
무법 스테이션으로 집합.
So
다들 몇 시 몇 분까지 집합하세요. 우리 조지로 갑니다.
one of the earlier 3D explorations, which then lead to one of the final concept art, or the final implementation of this. So when we were at the point where we were kind of okay, or where we thought like, okay, this is an environment that we want to see, then we took care about the last 20%. So the last 20% in this case means having a final render and painting over. So we were just painting over in Photoshop and doing some more refinements for the mood and the lighting. We were painting in some of the decaling and some of the graffitis, because it is ultimately easier to do all these things in 2D than in 3D.
모이는데 3시간인 게 현실적인 거죠. 게임이니까.
So we were able to just refine the final concept in this regard. And this wasn't a straight process from
야, 이 아저씨는 총 들고 있는데? 대박, 총 들고 있잖아 지금. 뭐지, 경비원인가? 아니, 무법 스테이션에 경비원이 있다? 진짜 스테이션에 내가 총 들 수 있나? 존나 그러면 지랄 맞을 텐데. 저기 완전 미친 존대든. 와, 존나 미친 존대일 것 같은.
What is the player doing, or what is the player doing at this point? So will he encounter these gang members? Will he try to find a way around? Is he going to use some of the ladders or the underground vents, for example? So we were changing the concepts here and there, more or less. And this leads to, in the end, having a nice variety of
자경단?
concepts.
자경단 맞습니까? 강도단
then could cherry pick the best parts of it, or the in other teams, the environment team, the design team could cherry pick the best ideas from those concepts. And this was pretty much a rundown of
멕시코 카르텔
the
얘기하니까
concept
살짝
development for the
이야기가
space
같다.
station's interior.
Thanks, Christiana. Looked appropriately scummy.
So we've been talking a lot about the insides of the stations. We've been looking at a lot of the concept
짐 레이너 나오나?
but now we can jump to Josh, and Josh is going to talk about
조시라는 사람이
one of my favorite parts of the process, and it's when we take some concepts and we start to do some ideation, some visual development in the engine.
엔진?
Hi, my name's Josh Van Zorlen. I'm the principal environment artist here at
계속
Cavok.
우주 스테이션 디자인 쪽에
Today we're going to be
얘기하고
going through the Pyro space station's visual target and pre-production sort of things that we're going to be doing for these rundown slash
다 녹화
outboard
방송이야. 나는
space
실시간
stations.
방송
So what I have here right in front of me now is obviously the food court from our Stanton space stations. We've just dragged the wear up on all of them. So now we're getting all of this really
겁나
nice
분위기 봐. 씨발.
surfaces, right?
오.
So if I turn off my working lights, which
뭐야,
hopefully
이거.
are gonna, produce that mood that we're after. So I'll turn on that right now. So a number of things have happened right in front of us.
물 떨어내는
You
거
can
봐요.
instantly see we've got lots
와.
of heavy fog coming in.
존나
Don't pay too
싹퍽이네.
much attention to the particles now. I'll go into them a little bit later. We've got some light panels up here shooting through the rafters, and we've got another one over here as well. Right, so we're going to do a quick little thing here.
갑자기
just adding
저글링
some
튀어나와도
papers,
이상하지 않다니까?
right? And now this is really important, not only to achieve the art direction, but it gives us a really nice level of parallax within the scene, right?
카보그네
We have a couple
크라프트거든요.
of design constraints within this space as well.
지랄도.
One of those being we have a gang and then a general civilian population, right? Now, one of the things that we wanted to do in terms of that design in this particular space was separate it out in like a kind of class type system.
불 더 들어왔다.
So we're going to start to explore some of the requirements of that. One of that being that, like I mentioned before, you can't get up here unless you're in favor with the gang. So we need to put in the instruments that are going to help portray that, and that is a checkpoint, right? So,
여러분이
just a side note, all of this
파이로
stuff
게임
is super work in
집단이랑
progress,
이제
and
레퓨테이션,
nothing is
명성치도
final. So
있으려면
don't
관계도도
read too
생기나
much
봐요.
into it. So
거기에 따라서
from
갱단과의
here, we're
관계도에
missing a few
따라서
bits and
갈 수
pieces,
있는 데가
right?
있고 못
One of the
가는
ways
데가
we're
있고
gonna
이런가
solve
봐요.
that is with
그러니까
graffiti.
그런 것도 있는 거야.
Right. So I'm going to turn on
그러니까
those
여러분들이
details
존나
now.
나쁜 짓을 많이 하면
You can
갱단과
start to see
친해지.
that the walls here are starting to disappear a little bit. It's a very subtle effect in this particular area, but you'll start to see how much more it comes through. in
갱단 미션
others,
따로
right?
있겠네.
So moving on from here,
제노스의
we
미션
need
따로
to start
있겠네.
putting
그러니까 제노스의
stuff
미션인데
in the
제노스의 편을 드는
environment. So bear with
제노스의
me for a
미션.
sec when I turn this on.
오,
Alright, so we've got here
햄버거
is a
줘요.
lot of
여기도
stuff,
햄버거
right? We
파나요?
really want to get that
저
kind of
라면은
vibe
언제
in, like
구현되죠?
it's kind of similar in the concept, and start seeing how far we can push the limitations of what we can do in the engine, but also what we can do with our technical systems as well, right? One of the things that was immediately
파이로 내부
apparent to us
스테이션만 보는데도
is
벌써
that
즐거운데?
AI is
앞으로
really
뭘 보여,
tricky
더
to deal
뭘
with
보여주려고
when
우리한테
in
기대감을
tight
주는
and
거야?
enclosed
이제
spaces,
시작한 지
right?
한
So we need
시간도
to
안
look
됐어
at
아직.
areas like
이제
this here and
근데
this
이제 벌써부터
here
이런 거
to make sure
보여주면
that it's wide enough
뭘
that
더
a viewer
뭘 더
here can
보여줄 거야?
pass each other or a player and not, look completely gross.
상대부터 일본 중국
Now,
분이야.
I mentioned
그런
lighting
게 좀
before.
있긴 해.
So I'm going to turn off the working lights that we've got so far, and you'll start to see
오, 분위기.
what I mean. So we've got a whole bunch of stalls
Wow.
here at the moment. The entire scene is
약간
being lit by
홍콩
the stalls
지하상가 이런 데 가는 거 느낌인데.
this has already come a long way, and the stalls themselves have had a bit of a lighting pass, so this is already starting to look quite nice, but we're not getting, that thickness that we were getting up on the top level, right? We're not getting that little bit of life to a certain extent. And we're also getting these areas here where they just fall completely into darkness, which is not fun. So obviously, like I said
라이팅
before,
관련된
we've been doing
이야기는
lighting as we
방언
go through
관련된
this
거는
process, but just to see how
아직까지는
much of an
확정된 게
impact
없다고 합니다.
that pass
얼마나
can
그
do on an
두꺼운
environment like
느낌을
this.
계속 줄 수
We'll just have
있는지를
one for you.
열심히 고민
So you
중이라고
start to
하네요.
instantly see we've now got a lot more thickness within the environment. And if I just double check just to make sure that our lights are generating correctly, cool. So
아마 이 정도
we're getting a lot
광원이
more
최종 본이지
voluminous
않을까 싶게 하네.
lighting now. We're getting all of these
근데 야,
heaters
니들만
coming in
생각해보니까
now,
니들만
the heat
WASD
shimmering
누르면
off
게임하고
them.
있네.
We've got these little
손 새끼들 지들만 파이로 시스템 점프 게이트 타고 점프 파이로 시스템 있는 무법 스테이션 내부 들어가고 구경하고 불꽃 탁 켰다 하고 나도 할 수 있어. 나도 할 수 있다고.
What I was mentioning in terms of the rain, right? So yes, we're talking about the rain now. Why is there rain inside?
아, 그 왜 내부에
So
비가
this
있냐?
is generally a really cold station.
그래서 지금 다 답변하고 있는데 이게 기본적으로 매우 차가운 우주 스테이션이라 가지고 그 힛이 받은 수증기가 위로 올라가다가 얼어서 다시 물로 떨어진다고 하네요 지금. 오 씨발 존나 디테일하네. 와.
So what happens when you have this many people cooking food in this one small area, you know, breathing hot air, that sort of thing, it all starts to rise in this environment, and it starts to get that massive cabin, right, that we've got up here, all the way up to the roof there. As it goes up, it starts to cool down, right? And we start to get precipitation inside, where it starts to rain. And even in many instances, we start to get a little bit of ice coming through as well. So that means once it's all fallen down here, it's actually quite wet and damp. It's still cold and a little bit warm around heaters, but it's generally quite damp because of that.
그냥 장난치려고 조금 민감복 입을 수는 있겠는데 조금만 문제 생기면 바로 꽂고 갈아버려야겠다. 그리고 이제 인벤토리 시스템이 생기고 이제 인벤토리에 들고 다니는 양밖에 못 들고 다니니까 사실상 갑옷을 벗을 일이 거의 없어지는.
So that is pretty much Pyro stations. I hope you really enjoyed seeing the breakdown that we've done here today, learning a little bit about the process of going in and doing a visual target, and you know, just a little bit more of that earlier process and problem solving that we go through.
아직
so yeah, I hope you really enjoyed the rest of
아직까지 많은 문제들이 있다라고 얘기를 하네.
I'll catch you later.
Cool, thanks Josh. That was looking really good. All right, so as we continue our process of exploring the Pyro system, now I think it'd be good to look a little bit at the planets and moons.
이제 파이로에 있는 위성과 행성들 좀 보겠다 하네요.
One of the things we thought would be interesting to talk about is how do we design a
system
up? As with all of this, we always start from narrative, you know, before we put any pen to paper or we have any discussions about their experience. We always start from the world that, Dave and others have kind of built.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's also the thing of
치킨 먹어도 돼. 치킨이 안 들어가.
Pyro, I think,
치킨 미리 먹을
initially
거래.
conceived
입에 안
very
들어가.
early on in the process, but once we finally are tackling it from a
미리 먹었어요.
realistic, practical, how we're going to build this, what are each planet going to look like? It's important, to ask more questions to flesh it out more, because we kept it intentionally kind of vague.
제가 설명도 하고 있습니다.
You guys to do what you do and the designers to do what they do.
So when we started that exploration process, we knew we had like a
나쁜맨이 팔로우합니다. 세븐 어서 오세요.
So we literally thought, okay, how do we design a system? And fundamentally, it kind of comes into maybe three key areas. So because we're a space game, the establishment of that planet is very, very important because it describes everything from continent breakup.
근데 2년 전 시티즌콘 때 공개했던 마이크로텍은 구현됐어요.
We started to sketch in ideas of what the key establishing shots were going to be like.
완전 복불.
And then from there, we jump into key art. So key art is basically on the surface, what is the mood, what's the tone that we're expecting to see. And
데모 아니에요.
The first one we
이번 시티즌콘의 모든 내용들은 액티브하게 디벨롭먼트 하고 있는 거예요. 현재 개발 중, 진짜 개발 중인 거예요. 개발하겠다는 게 아니고 개발 중인 내용을 보여주는 거기 때문에 생각보다 재작년 시티즌콘 때 공개했던 내용 중에 절반 정도 구현이 됐어요. 그래도 마찬가지로 이 시티즌콘에서 나오는 것들 중에서 최소 절반 정도 구현될 거예요. 앞으로 향후 1, 2년 내에.
Future planet tech, weather, so we kind of went crazy with ideas as we was exploring. So we went through the various planets, did some key art, and again put them up on the board, and just to validate.
우와 무슨 색이야? 행성 봐.
That palette.
파이로 4번이었나?
We're getting that diversity of color,
노란 거 좀 뭐야?
hue,
오, 눈산에도 노란 거 뭡니까 저거?
composition, because even within something like Stanton, there's variety. You know, that was very important for me.
파이로가 언제 나올지에 대한 이야기는 서버 매싱 발표할 때 확실히 알 수 있을 것 같아요.
But now we're going
왜냐면 서버 매싱 없이는 파이로는 못
we
나거든요.
continued that ideation process there. So we had the establishing shots, we had some key art, and then from there is we create like what we call like breakout packs. This is where when we're talking through with design about, you know, what are the interactables that the player maybe will come across, what are the minables, what are the harvestables, and then from there we start to build out literal breakouts for almost asset packs that will go to the team. Now from there, like we did a first pass exploration, and what we did is we put it all together on a single board for Chris to have almost a commander's view
그러니까 익스플로레이션 컨텐츠와 관련된 모든 거를 컨셉적으로 이렇게 만들고 있는 거네. 각각 파이로 행성들마다 어떤 지형이 생길 건지, 어떤 생물체와 어떤 식물 식생군이 있을 건지, 어떤 지형인지 이런 식으로 디자인을 컨셉을 쫙 해가지고 일단은 파이로 4번은 파이로 행성이에요. 그러니까 위성까지는 얘기 안 한 것까지는 파이로 4적 텍스처는 파이로 행성들 각각의 이름이 아직 없거든요. 파이로 1번, 파이로 2번, 파이로 3번, 파이로 4번 이렇게 있어요.
So that was a snapshot of the visual exploration process we use when designing a system from the ground up. Now we can take a break from us talking and go to an art video, a sizzle video created by the art team. And what this will show is it will show a kaleidoscope of planets and moons from Pyro.
파이로에 대한 행성과 달 같은 거 전반적인 영상을 좀 보여주겠다.
techniques and processes and tools that the art team have.
보자. 딱 찍어 봅시다. 우리 한번 봅시다. 아, 여기 파이로야? 여전히 캐럭은 우수하고 캐럭을 나의 기함으로 삼은 거는 제일 잘할 생각이 있어. 다 파이로입니다, 여러분. 여기에 스텝턴 아니에요? 바다 있네? 약간 지구형 행성 같은 것도 있나? 드풀로 저렇게 날 수 있다고? 거짓말 치지 마, 이 새끼들아. 야, 구름 끼는 거 보고. 파이로 시스템에도 행성들의 플래네테리 볼류메틱 클라우드 기술이 들어온대요. 오리콘에 있는 거. 그거 들어온다고 했어. 내 CPU도 죽고, 내 램도 죽고, 글카도 죽고.
Awesome. I'm fully in love with Pyro, and hopefully from seeing that video, hopefully you guys are too. So as a continuation now, we can jump to Sebastian, and Sebastian will talk to you a little bit more about the
파이로는 도시가 없어요.
process.
대신 홈스테드라고 해서 지상 마을 같은 게 있는 거죠.
Maximilian will talk a little bit about geology creation, how we create that type of biome, and then lastly, we can go to Özlem, and Özlem will go into a lot more detail about how we take some of the concept art that we've been showing of the botanicals and how we interpret that to in-game artwork.
플래네테리 클라우드 인게임, 그러니까 구름 관련 기준들.
Hi, my name is Sebastian, and I'm a principal environment artist on the Planet content team. I'll be talking a bit about the data that's defining the visuals of the
얼마나 놀라운 거 알려드릴까요? 방송 지금 지금 영상
Crusader was
시작한 지
our first
40분밖에 안
astronomical
됐어.
object
시티즌콘
that
한
made use of the
45분 됐구나.
cloud tech that's being built by Carsten Benz.
이거 발표하기 1시간 남았어. 라이프 인펄스.
While working on
도대체
Crusader,
뭘 더
we learned
얘기해
a lot
주려고.
on what kind of data gives us
아직
good
1시간에
results,
남은 거지.
and what is better to be avoided. With the tech being new, we also needed all
저기
new
종료가.
workflows for it. We are currently building more tools for producing
아직
the
라이프 안
data,
보여줬어.
so we expect to get
플래닛
better, more complex results in less time.
다 보여줬지만 아직 라이프 안 보여줬어.
We are evaluating everything from a very manual process that involves painting every pixel to a fully procedural one with little to no artist input, and we will probably end up somewhere between the two. This essentially means that what you are about to see is very likely subject to change.
10년 안 됐습니다. 10년이라 하지 마요.
Due to the way the data
금지어입니다.
works,
10년
you can either throw
금지어예요.
random
10년 된
data
적도
at it
없고
and
지금
hope
된
for
적도
happy
없고
accidents,
실질적으로
or we
개발
can be
시작은
very
10년은
specific
커녕
with
5년밖에
the
안
data
됐어.
and what kind of cloud formations come out of it in certain areas of the planet. For most use cases, there are two types of textures that need to be created. The first of which is the global property map, which determines what type of cloud is being used at any point on the planet's surface. It is also used for
오버매싱 몇
controlling
시에
color
하죠?
placement of non-water
세 번째
based
발표가
clouds,
네 번째
but I'll
발표가
get to that later. The other map is for defining the types of clouds and is named accordingly. The cloud type map allows us to control the cloud density and the impact of the two separately tiling 3D noises, which add detail and definition to what would otherwise be fairly low resolution shapes. The way the two textures interact is maybe best compared to forming a vase out of clay on a pottery wheel, and that's kind of what we're going to do now. In this video, we are revolving
구름
half a
관련된
cylinder
기술
of a base
개발한다고
around a circular pattern,
구름
which
패턴
gives us
같은
a
거라든지
base-like shape in 3D space.
두께라든지 이런 거를 지금
The
이렇게
big
보여주고
difference to a
있네요.
pottery wheel, though, is
여기 밑에 보면
that we can not
클라우드
only
타입
fit the data in the
덴시티
shape of the circle,
있죠?
but ultimately
이렇게 구름
whatever
모양을
shape
일부러
we
이렇게
want.
병 모양처럼 만들어서 그냥 테스트하는 중,
With the
테스트
density
용도.
channel, we can control how thick the clouds appear. White pixels represent very dense clouds, black pixels produce no clouds at all, and then we also have everything in between. There's always a tiny bit of impact from the tiling noises, which you can see to have an effect on the lower density regions. The shaping noise and its control texture are the most impactful in terms of turning a nicely shaded volume.
우리 이제 왜 풀심에 우와 구름 봐. 풀심했던 분들은 아시겠지만 풀심에 옵션을 존나 올리면 구름을 뚫고 가고 막 구름의 흔적이 남고 이런 게 들어가 있잖아요. 컴퓨터 녹아내리는 소리가 들리겠지만 스타시티즌도 그런 걸 만들 예정이. 구름 뚫고 가면 거기 구름에 구멍이 뚫려 있고 막 이런 거 만들 예정. 단지 그게 우리 컴퓨터가 버티려는 다른 문제고.
We usually just edit
컴퓨터가
everywhere, unless
녹아내리겠지.
we specifically want soft clouds with less definition. Black values add details in the way the tiling noise is authored, while white values invert the noise, and medium gray values mean that the noise has no impact.
야씨 말 너무 못한다.
Maybe you can already get a feeling for the complexity of the system and how every pixel in every channel can have a dramatic effect on
야
the
이런 구름 나오기 시작하면 이제 구름 뚫으면서
Another thing we can change are
대기권에서
the tiling 3D noises
구름을
themselves.
뚫으면서 독파한다 생각해봐요. 내가 내 화면에는 아무것도 안 보여. 계기판에 적 함선이 앞에 있다고 뜨는데 레이더는 뜨는데 눈으로 안 보이는 거지. 근데 그걸 타겟팅 해가지고 일단 쏘고 보는 거야. HUD 맞춰가지고. 그래서 안 보이면서 암흑 속에서 도구 파이팅 하는 거지. 어디서 날라온지 모르겠는데 막 레이저 리피터가 나한테 날라오고 함선은 레이더에 뜨는데 어딘지 모르겠고 아무튼 일단 싸우는 거고.
It has a second channel, which, in combination with a color gradient, is used to control the global color of the clouds for not so physically correct coloring of the gas giants. We sometimes have to restrain ourselves to not make brightly colored balls of cotton candy. There are a lot more settings that allow us to tweak everything from how the clouds are shaded and shadowed, over the global impact and frequency of the parameters that drastically change.
아 영화 같은 거는 진짜 영화가 아니라 약간 드라마 형식으로 시나리오 잘 짜서 언젠가 찍고 싶어요. 근데 그런 인원과 자본과 시나리오와 영상미 같은 걸 다 하려면 제가 대기업이 돼야 됩니다. 아니면 할 수가 없어. 나의 능력으로는 못한.
Because of that, and since I'm still an artist at heart, I leave you with this bad drawing of a cat instead of more epic clouds.
여러분 연기했어요.
Thank you for your time.
목소리 돼야 돼.
My name is Max, and I'm a senior environment artist at CIG. I am part of the Planet team, where my focus is on planet and asset creation.
플래닛과 그 행성과 행성 자원들 만드는 디자이너라 합니다.
Plus a little preview of what you can expect in the future. When creating a new biome, we start by assigning ground textures to the terrain geometry. For this research and development desert biome, we chose a selection of different types of sand and soil. For additional depth and detail, we have the option to use displacement mapping. The next step is adding our
자,
first layer
이렇게
of
존나
ground
우리
cover
기대감
assets.
끌어놓고
In our game,
다음
ground cover is
발표가
any low-cost
그거든요.
asset up to knee height,
그 함선
which
공
does not
3선
require
발표거든요.
collision and allows us
여기서
to
이제
use a lot of
400i
these
딱
assets
나오고
to create a
신규
nice level
캐피털
of
나오고 막
density.
이런다.
Here
근데
we
박수
use a mix
치면
of
영상 보는
gravel,
거지.
patches
녹음이
of moss,
녹화가
and
어떻게 되든
dry
상관없어.
grass.
박수 치면
After
박수
that,
치면서
we
보는
add
거지.
slightly bigger
씨발
assets
이제
in the
방금
form of
씨발
clusters
이러면서
of
박수
desert
치면
bushes to give context to the smaller assets and add variety. We finished the object scattering pass by adding individual larger rocks and arrangements of small
아니야, 내
rocks which
생각에는
give the
얘들도
player
생각이
a
있기
better
때문에
understanding of
컨셉의
how far away
홈페이지에서
something is
영상 그
when walking,
발표하면서 막바로
driving, or
팔면
flying
사람들이
over
시청자
planets.
안 봐요. 안 보기
For
때문에
performance reasons, we
시티즌콘
use a range
끝나고
of
판매
settings
시작할
with
거야, 내
randomized
생각에는.
rotation and scale values to get as much variety as possible out of the number of
내
assets
생각에는
we
하루 뒤에 판매.
created to mimic a level of complexity that feels organic and comparable to what you find on Earth.
야,
Something that we have been missing on our current planets and moons are massive rock formations due to tech limitations.
아직까지
Some of these limitations
달과
have since been solved. For example, we are now able to render assets much further. Because of that, we recently kicked off the
중간에
research
놓쳤어,
and
먼저.
development phase during the production of the Pyro system to find workflows for the creation and distribution
우와,
of chips.
우와, 저거 뭐
Full
넣었다,
disclosure,
저
though,
돌
this
몇
is
개
early in
꽂아놨다고
development
분위기가
and definitely
달라져.
work in progress, but we still wanted to give you a little glimpse of what to expect in the future. The challenge for us will be to figure out how we can make these assets look as good as possible from all
이런
angles. If a
자원들,
player walks up to them on
행성
foot, they must
행성
look
내
just as
행성
good as when a
디자인을
player decides to
도와줄 수 있는
land the
자원들
ship on the
가지고
highest point
얼마나
of the cliff.
자연스럽게
But
만드는
we
게
are
현재
excited to
이
add an even
사람들의
more epic level of
고민이고
scale to our game.
점점 스케일
That's
늘리는
it from
것도
me.
열심히 노력하고
Thank you for
있다고 합니다.
watching and enjoy the rest of CitizenCon.
Hello, my name is Özlem and I'm part
이제는
of the
행성에 있는
organic
올게닉 식생구
Today I want to talk a bit about how we build the different biomes on Pyro 3.
파이로 시스템에
Pyro 3
있는
is a
위선의
planet with very
행성에
distinct
각각
biomes.
어떤 다른 식생군을
For
만들고
example,
있는지
we
얘기를
got the
해주는
yellow
겁니다.
moss biome that is a strong contrast to the dark volcanic regions. We have some icy areas, boulder fields,
아이스 에리아도
acidic
있고
fields, different coastlines, and a lot more.
다양한
When working on a
실제 풀
biome,
같은
the
것도
first
있고.
thing we do is to have a look at the concept art. We do an asset breakdown
누가
for all the elements we need to recreate the scene.
강황가루겠지,
By doing
카레가.
so, we get more
그
information
금인가?
about
혹시
what
금
kinds
아니야?
of rocks and
좀
vegetation
긁어 가야
assets we
되는데
need,
그러면? 금이면 긁어 가야 돼.
proportions of the assets in relation to the character, the distribution
금색은
and
아니다.
frequency of those assets on the planet, but also the amount of coverage per biome on the planet.
오 뭐야 이거 컨셉용 사진들을 가지고 만들었나 보네요.
Color palette, the
와
terrain
이렇게
colors,
넣어가지고 우와 씨발.
and what to scatter on the coastlines.
약간 곰팡이 같은데.
The last thing we
좀
can see from the concept
곰팡이
is
노란 곰팡이
the acid and ground
느낌이
materials.
조금 있는데.
We also try to reduce the amount of the acid packs because
사실
of
금이랑
performance
다
and time
쌀물을
constraints. Instead of doing 50 unique rocks, we can achieve the same result by using just 3 with our procedural scattering system, since the assets will be scaled and rotated randomly. After figuring out all the necessary elements, we start with the whiteboxing phase. This means
뭐야,
doing a
저거.
very quick mock-up of the scene by using very simple assets. The white boxes should just represent the shape and color of the final object.
일단은 화이트
We
박스
do that to
상태예요.
see if the asset breakdown we did beforehand is working in the 3D space as well. At this stage of the process, we can still change the whole look of the scene if we don't like the outcome yet. We can say, let's make the rocks 5 times bigger, or blue instead of red, and so on. Or we realize we need to do some research on a specific acid to solve it visually,
와,
which was the case for
황금
the moss, for
들판이다.
example.
저런 거
When
앉아서
doing
가만히
R&D on the
피샷
moss,
찍어도
we were
존나
trying
이쁘게.
different shapes and sizes. And we also had to figure out how to do the moss strands that are covering the whole mesh. To make
메쉬
the
가지고
workflow
얘기를
for
하고
the moss
있고
strands a bit easier,
어떤
we used
식으로
Houdini
텍스처
to
같은 거
procedurally
입히는지
scatter them.
이야기를 좀 하고 있습니다.
Otherwise, it would have been too time consuming to place every single moss strand by hand, since there are several thousands of them. After figuring out how to do the moss strand, we still didn't like the overall shape of the moss, as it was a bit too blobby and yellow.
너무
We wanted something that
볼록볼록해서
looked a
좀
bit
칠었다
more
칠해가지고
natural
좀
and
더
integrates better into the
다듬고
terrain.
있다고 하네요.
So we
다듬은
created some
중이라는.
rocks with a moss blend
그러니까
on
자기들이
top.
어떤 식으로 결과물이
We
나왔는지를
broke up
얘기를
the
쭉
moss
하고 있는
shape
거예요.
even further because
처음에는
it looked
화이트
a little
박스
bit too
시작으로
moldy.
돌 위에
And we
노란색을
added
찍어
different
놨다가
kinds of moss
그걸
strands to give
가지고
a little bit
좀
more.
다듬어서 풀 같은 걸로
In the end,
놓고
all these
거기에
things
지형
got us to
형태를
result that we
봐서
were
지형을 좀
satisfied.
다듬고
The usual
돌 모양
approach to
같은 걸
setting up a
바꾸고
biome is
해가지고
to start with the
현재 이
largest
모양이
elements
이렇게 나오고
first
있다.
and work your
이게
way to the
전반적인 이야기입니다.
smallest
지금
one.
내용이.
If we take the moss preset as an example, we would
지금
start by
내국
adding the
채팅창에
largest
뭐라고 적혔는지
elements
알아요?
first,
RIP
and adding
GTX
some small
1080이라고
rust
적혀
patches
있어요.
around it to create a nice form.
외국인 채팅창에서
continued adding some
RIP 그래픽
letterpress to
카드를
make it sit nicer on the terrain. Then we realized we needed something bigger to bring the elements closer together. So we decided to add some high grass as well. The final steps are adding some ground cover like small rocks or tiny moss.
산 뭐 올라가면
As you
되죠.
can
예,
see, while
올라가면.
building a biome, we need to do several iterations to get the best visuals. Thank you for watching.
아, 존나 재밌네. 다음 컨셉 뭐야? 다음 뭐야? 야, 식생곤이.
Thanks to Seb, Maxi, and Oslam for showing us their work. So when we started looking at outposts and started really from a ground up on how to make it so that there's more diverse gameplay in there. The player can
이제
approach
지상
it
기지
from
관련된 이야기를
multiple
합니다.
routes.
아웃포스트 같은
There can
이야기를
be combat
고민을 하고
encounters.
있다고 얘기하네요.
There can be social
이제
encounters.
지상 관련된 이야기, 지상 기지
So
관련된
we
이야기를 할
needed
거고.
to kind of rebuild and rethink the way that we were doing this. We started honing in on what was working, what wasn't working, and then did a lot of adjustments.
Yeah.
Blazing the Trail Colonies Outpost Exterior.
We've had outposts in our game for some time.
아웃포스트 기지만
You
하는
know,
거죠.
when we started to hear from an art side for what their design requirements were going to be, fundamentally thinking about these as modules, thinking about them as thematic modules, and very specific.
사실 크리스 로버츠는요, 2012년에 처음으로 펀딩을 받기 시작하면서 속으로 그 생각을 하고 있었을 거야. 현재 내 컴퓨터 사양으로는 내가 생각하는 게임을 절대 못 만든다. 천천히 만들면서 컴퓨터 사양이 최소 모든 유저들이 램 같은 거 한 128기가는 기본으로 끼고 있는 그런 시대를 기다리자. 약간 그런 느낌으로 존버타고 있는 것 같아.
Yeah, thinking about how we wanted to push this forward. I mean, Chris has always talked about putting outposts into players' hands, and so we needed to think about how.
화봉이 그러면 그런 몇 개월 그렇게 몇 년 걸리는 거임?
Make these
내년이요.
homes feel, homes or outposts or even businesses feel unique for the
오,
way that
새로
they
이런
want to
지상
play.
기지들이 이게 지상 기지라기보다는 이제 기존에 우리가 스탠턴에 있던 지상 기지랑 다르게 아웃포스트, 그러니까 우리나라 말로 번역하면 기지인데, 그러니까 정확하게 우리나라의 정확하게 의역을 좀 해보면 이제 지상 마을, 지상 거주 마을 같은 거죠. 그러니까 그전에 있던 그냥 일반적인 채광 기지 이런 게 아니고 이제 실제 인간들이 거주할 수 있는 마을 개념인데, 빌리지 개념인데.
I know that design we came up. In particular, Andreas and Dan came up with a long list of things.
여기 NPC들이 실제 살고 있고 우리가 저기 살 수 있을지 모르겠는데 그런 거 관련된 태양력 발전 시스템, 뭐 디자인, 옥시전, 산소 같은 시스템 이런 거를 다 만들고 있다.
How can we take those and make them feel unified and visually unified together?
Yeah. Fundamentally, the thing that probably got us the most excited is finally we've started to think about these as like unified settlements, base building. So as you can see on some of the concepts, we deliberately presented early exploration shots in this kind of like semi-isometric view to see, how does it feel if I'm laying out my base? How would these modules kind of
얘네들이 고민하고 있는 게 뭐냐면 이런 하나하나의 요소들을 만든 거를 모아서 하나의 전체적인 보기 좋은 아웃포스트를 완성하는 거에 대한 지금 약간 그런 쪽에 약간 포커스가 좀 있나 봐요. 그런 얘기 좀 하고 있고요.
So just to continue on with the module building and the module creation, we can jump to Christian. And Christian can talk in a bit more detail about the visual development process we did for creating the exteriors of these new outposts.
뉴 아웃포스트의 외관을 어떻게 만들고 있는지 보여주겠다고 합니다.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the colonialism, and now I'm going to show you a little bit more about the modules. So the very first thing that we did was creating all the primitives and all the primitive shapes into 3D. So as you can see here, we have
이렇게 일일이 건물을 하나하나 디자인해서 3D 모델링해서 그거를 그 중에서도 이건 괜찮고 이거 안 괜찮고 골라서 그 내부의 디자인을 다 만들어서 NPC를 집어넣어서 필요한 지상 태양계 위성이나 달이나 뭐 행성을 골라서 배치를 하고 거기에 이제 AI를 집어넣고 그런 게임을 만들고 있는 거잖아요 지금. 그래 진짜 미친 거 아니에요? 아니 너무 앰비셔스해서 진짜 이거는 사기극이 맞다는 이야기를 내가 부정할 수가 없어. 너무 앰비셔스, 너무 야망이 넘치는 게임이에요. 근데 그거를 현실화하고 있다는 것 자체가 와 진짜 얘들은 진짜 미친 거다. 이게 진짜 이 프로젝트는 몇 년이 걸릴지 모르겠지만 그래도 지속은 돼야겠다. 그 생각했을 때.
Briefly looking into the modules. So what you can see here is the very first concepts for the solar panels.
솔직히 진짜 몇 년 걸릴지는 몰라요. 하지만 이런 게임 이런 야망을 가진 게임이 개발을 멈추진 않았으면 좋겠어. 그대로 갔으면 좋겠어.
that we did stand pretty much those. So those were one of the archetypes, and you see there are small buildings for housing or housing buildings. There are some building types that are more communal. We have some secondary and tertiary buildings.
저 전봇대 하나 만드는 것도 안테나 하나 만드는 것도 얘들은 진심을 담습니다.
colonist on a planet, right?
내가 이런 게임 하고 있는데 뭐 사이버펑크, 배틀필드 2042 이런 게 보이겠어? 물론 그 게임들이 재미없다는 거, 사펑은 재미없어. 그러니까 배틀필드가 재미없다는 거 아니에요? 근데 그 전반적으로 이런데 내가 돈을 쓰고 싶지, 이런 야망 있는 게임에 돈을 쓰고 싶지, 그 다른데 돈을 쓰고 싶지 않아. 그러니까
we were looking at those hints of life. Maybe you are a kind of a farmer. So you see already this is the first archetype. This is more cylindrical. There are some storage spaces coming in here and there. So where would you store your oxygen or your water?
약간 여러분 스타워즈 영화 보신 분들 알겠지만 그 주인공이 그 나오는 그 사막 행성 있잖아요. 행성 이름이 갑자기 기억이 안 난다. 거기에도 이렇게 도시 같은 마을이 있잖아요. 나중에 팔콘이 뜨고 내려가는 그런 마을. 네, 그런 개념이 이제 파이로 시스템의 지상 기지처럼 생길 수도 있는 거지. 약간 소형 거주구역처럼 집단 마을 같이 있어가지고 도시급은 아닌데 그런데 우리가 내려가서 이제 우리가 할 일 하고 미션도 받고 뭐 이렇게 보급도 받고 이런 거. 핫도인 그래.
You have to walk around your settlement and see like, okay, I can put some stuff in here, but if I need something
중간에 스톰트루프도 돌아다니면서 플렉스 댄 뿅뿅뿅 하는 거야. 우리 총 들고 씨발 저 새끼 뭐야? 죽여봐요.
How do they react to the environment, right? So this was just one of the very many.
그러면 이제 제다이 나와야 되는데. 라이트 세이버 나오나? 점점점 먼 산으로 가긴 하는데 나오는 건가?
How they would fit inside this main architectural style that we wanted to see more involved, right? So just a very early version of the refinery, for example.
야 이거 존나 디테일하게 잘 만들었다. 아니 어떤 게임들은 그냥 FPS 하나 만들겠다고 조그만 시나리오 맵 만들어서 거기도 디테일이 그렇게 살려있지 않아가지고 그냥 풍수용 거로 만족하는 게임들이 대부분인데 이거는 솔직히 여러분 이런 지상기지가 만들어졌을 때 저런 전봇대 하나, 저런 와이어 하나 이런 거 제대로 보는 사람은 없잖아요. 근데 그거를 억지로 다 디자인 잘 해가지고 어울리게 만들어서 배치하고 있는데 인테리어 나오네요. 이제 내부 어떻게 되어 있는지.
Awesome, thanks Cristiano. So that pretty much covers the work we've been doing on the exteriors. So now let's jump to the interiors. So we pretty much had to follow that same ideation process that we did for the exterior, but now for the interior. Now, slightly more simple, we knew there was a few key areas that we needed to design. First, it was the social space. You know, this is basically these kind of communal
내부 구성
like
이제
open kitchen, seating areas, windows, an area where people could kind of hang out and relax.
내부에서
And then
와
second to
디자인
that
보세요.
was habitation. You know, we knew these are going to need to be abodes. We knew we needed bathrooms, hab units. But again,
와 화장실 세면대 변기 나오는 거 봐. 진짜 와 골 때린다 진짜. 와 저런 디자인하고 보여주자 진짜. 와.
Everything about this
와
process was to
이 새끼들 디테일
create
진짜
a good design
미쳤다니까.
which you would look at and relate to and think, oh, I could see myself living there. I could see someone living there for
여러분
quite a long period of time.
그
So in
내
habitation,
방송은 뭐
soft,
시청자 간의
soft
침묵 이런 거
surfaces,
상관없는데
soft shapes, but again, something
적당히.
which felt fairly integrated into the core architecture. In contrast to that, we knew we needed technical spaces. You know, these could be used in the future to be, I don't know,
제가 새로
soil
하면 돼요.
processing rooms
사실
or
관리하기가 인간 관리가 세상에
really
제일 어렵기
within
때문에
a technical bracket. So
하기 싫습니다.
this one was quite a tricky
세상에
one.
제일 힘든 게
because,
인간 관리예요.
again, we needed to describe a feeling
하고
of
싶지 않아요.
age and you know, a type of historical depth in this. So
사실
we
만들어서
tried
빵해달라고. 근데
you know,
우리 메디컬 기술 치료 관련된 이게 이렇게 빨리 나올 줄 알고 생각 못했잖아요. 올해 나올 거라고. 마찬가지로 먹고 싸고 오줌 누고 해결하고 이런 것도 갑작스럽게 나올 수가 있어. 갑작스럽게 나올 수 있거든요.
So these are the type of spaces.
언제 어느 순간 갑자기 우리의 그 뭐야 890 내부에 있는 목욕탕에서 캐릭터가 씻고 있을지 몰라요. 어느 순간 갑자기 내가 유튜브 영상을 만들어서 여러분 오늘 이제 다음 패치부터 우리는 먹고 마시는 거에 끝나지 않고요. 싸고 빼야 됩니다. 씻어야 되고요. 안 씻으면 캐릭터 위생수치 내려가지고 냄새 나고 병원 가야 되고 이래야 되는.
Yeah, kind of looking at who would be the people that would be inhabiting it, what are the circumstances that would drive them to be there, and so we sort of came up with like we call it the triangle of kind of the edge points of the outlaw and the corporate, and you know where these
사마린 맵은 실제로 행성내에 있는 우주 스테이션이에요.
Of 3 points, and it's also important to note too, you know, that this stuff would be applicable for the stuff we don't understand. Like if we wanted to add these back,
진짜 파투인 느낌
as
난다.
well, that it wasn't just exclusively Pyro based.
그럼 엔진 뭐야? 야 저기 그거 걔네들 나와야겠는데 파투인 그 걔네 조그만 외계인 뭐야?
Process, we pretty much focused on independent. Mainly because that was our baseline. It was very easy to kind of design these and visually design these spaces to, is it like an independent farmer or is it an independent miner? And then with that we wanted to really create an experience where you walked into one of these outposts and it feels old, it feels relatable, but it doesn't feel recognizable, kind of similar to if you went to like a historic ruin or a historic pot that you'd never really been to before.
Or yeah, somebody's old farm.
Exactly. So we did a lot of exploration process of like what type of artifacts would you find there? You know, how did people used to decorate the house in this time period? You know, you still see
건물 안에
patterns, surfaces,
뭐 뱀주도 아니고 뱀주 같은 거, 병 같은 거 만들어서 배치하고. 각각 컨셉에 맞게 해당 거주지, 해당 헤비테이션, 해당 아웃포스트가 자기들이 생각하는 그 컨셉에 맞게 내부 디자인들도 하나하나 다 만들어서 배치하고 인테리어도 인테리어 복구를 할 수 있잖아요. 솔직히 말해가지고 만들기 힘드니까 복구를 할 수도 있는 건데 그걸 가지고 이런 식으로 배치하고 만들고
points of interest that we want to go to, how we pull the player around the universe, and so.
레이싱 관련된 그거는 만들고 있어요. 우주 레이싱도 나올 거고 지상 레이싱도 나올 거예요.
What do we need here?
실제 로드맵도 레이싱이 있어요.
We need mining facilities, and then that helps to inform.
그러니까 좀 뭐랄까 30세기 치고는 기술 발전이 왜 이렇게 올드한 느낌이 든다는 사람들도 있어요. 맞아요. 그래서 실제로 그래요. 좀 완전 뭐랄까 미래형 초첨단 기술 개발의 느낌이라기보다는 스타워즈와 그 뭐야 일반적인 과학기술 발달과 약간 우주에 대한 우리가 갖고 있는 로망과 같은 판타지가 섞여 있는 게 이제 스타시티즌이지. 네. 그런 거죠. 약간 완전 이제 초첨단 그런 미래는 아니고 그런 게 약간 이제 사람들 더 자극하는 마흔이들 자극하는 거죠. 사실 스타워즈라는 게 그 많이 그 우주 SF 콘텐츠에 많은 작용을 했기 때문에 거기에 영향을 많이 받은 건 어쩔 수 없고.
When we're thinking about the theming, we kind of wanted like a space catalog, like a furniture catalog. So I know this is quite big for Chris. Is we kind of went down that process of, okay, let's design this one independent outpost in a few different ways. Like, how could people have decorated it in many different ways? And
뭐 아랍이야?
it's quite a fun process because
생긴 거
you
보소.
basically create space furniture.
여기에
catalogs,
자기
which,
이제 혹시 자기
which again are going to
기상
be ways
아웃포스트를
for,
만들 수 있게 되면
ways
이런
for the
깃발들
developers to
자기
be able to
그
dress and will build, but
현대나
eventually
오거나이제이션
it's a
깃발
way
같은 거
for
막
people
걸고
to
막 커스텀할 수
decorate their own
있으면
spaces.
자기만의 이제 공간이 만들어지는
When we're thinking about the outlaw versions of these outposts, again, the process.
왜냐면 얘네들은 싫다는 우주답게 얕다고 생각한 걸 수도 있어.
Which would turn this into
타워들도 삐용삐용 레이저 쏘는데 애들이 자꾸 싫다만 갈겨대니까 열받아서 그런 거 아닐까? 야 니들도 레이저 쓰란 말이야.
You know, is the signs of combat, is the signs of destruction still present? The actual physical act of occupying one of these outposts, have they defended it, have they boarded it up?
Yeah, it could be any number of situations. Yeah, it could be outlaws are squatting here and they're operating it as a base, which makes it a potential combat space. Or is it, was it potentially an independent refinery that outlaws attacked and killed everybody there, and now
is it a drug facility, so on and so forth.
그러니까 각 기지마다의 역할군도 있을 거예요. 얘기하고 있죠 방금. 뭐 리파이너리 하는 기지일 수도 있고 아웃포스트일 수도 있고 그냥 뭐 마이닝하는 뭐 마약 만드는 곳일 수도 있고 그런 데를 막 해적들이 쳐들어와서 다 죽여버리고 차지할 수도 있는 거고 이런 컨셉들을 계속 생각을 하고 있다 이런 식으로 얘기를 하고 있어요. 물론 그게 당장은 구현되지 않을 거고 당연히.
World building that we can do to present these outposts in a few different ways,
and even potentially reputation as well. Like we talked before about that idea that
단지에 대한 현대 문방이 그럼 엘프는 어디 있습니까? 엘프는 어디 있어?
General relationship with that corporation.
I mean that ties into the clan tags. Like maybe you've just come from one of the space stations that was occupied by a certain gang type. And then they sent you to a settlement on one of the surfaces of Pyro. And clearly it's been tagged by a different gang. So you basically want that read and that consistency.
이 아저씨. 방송하니까 살짝 느낌 오네.
I was quite excited about
살짝 느낌 오네.
was the idea of a
백종원처럼 생겼다.
We've been talking about buying and selling for a while, but thinking about it in a frontier context, it's almost like the money's kind of worthless, but it's more about the ability to barter or trade. So fundamentally, I thought it'd be cool that it'd be kind of design a module which focuses around
강하게 사는 민간인이 모여서 거주하는 듯한 뭔가 억센 사람들의 빌리지 같은 느낌의
and barter or trade
이런
components.
컴포넌트 같은 거 팔고 수리를 하고
if I had a farm
NPC들이 살고
like would I want load of credits or would I want that one component that kept my farm going, so we did, we took that idea and we ran with it, and we did some visual exploration into what would a trading post be like on one of these frontier.
저도 약간 그런 생각을 하는 게 저런데 컨텀 타고 그냥 들어가면 재미없을 것 같아. 행성에 파이로 시스템 딱 도착했는데 이제 가가지고 이제 대기권을 알면서 방향을 우리가 맞추는 거지. 위도 몇, 경도 몇에 마을이 있다는 정보가 있어. 직접 그럼 끝까지 날아가야 돼. 가서 거기에 뭐가 있다는 정보를 알고 거기에서 마을 거래를 하고 한번 뛰어서 다시 출발하고 이런 식으로 플레이가 돌아가면 더 현실적이고 물론 30K라든지 이런 게 터지지 말아야 될 것 맞아야 됩니다. 한데 아마 그런 류의 그러니까 지금은 모든 지상기지 그리고 뭐 모든 지역에 컨텀 비컨이 자동으로 컨텀 탈 수 있잖아요. 나중 가서는 그게 안 될 가능성이 높아요. 그러니까 모든 지역에 컨텀을 탈 수 있는 게 아니고요. 내가 컨텀 지도를 그려서 어느 좌표 어느 위치에까지 컨텀을 타도록 함선한테 명령을 내려서 거기까지만 컨텀을 타는 그런 시스템으로 변할 예정이기 때문에 나중에 지상기지가 있다고 해서 그 좌표와 위성을 알고 찾아가야 되지 퀀텀
and
삑
feel
하면
like
윙
the
돌아서 아랍행성
Alright,
돌아서
cool. So that
가진
was a
않을
little
거예요.
bit about the
그런 게
interiors of these
가능한 거는
outposts.
유명한
So
도시들
let's throw it over
이런
to
데만
Eric
가능하겠지.
now, and he
예,
can go
그런 데만
into
가능할
a lot
거고
more detail
나머지
into the visual
일반적인
design
지상
process we did
아웃포스트라든지 이런
for
것들은
the interiors.
아마 안 될 가능성이 있어요.
Hello, I'm Eric
물론
Gagnon,
당장 나왔을 땐 될
principal
거예요.
concept artist on
당장 나왔을 땐
Star
될 텐데
Today I will
그 이후로는
present
안
the
돼, 대부분 안 되게 개발될 거.
interior outpost concept and explain a bit how the pre-production process works.
뭐야?
The goal is to create an interior design for the homestead
디자인
colonialism
가려고
outpost.
얘기했어.
It was the first time we had to create a timeless design look.
그래서 탐사
We
컨텐츠가
have the
중요하고. 맞아.
objective to create something warm and with a cozy feeling.
우주 그러니까 내가 얘기했잖아요. 우리나라 사람들이 스타시티즌을 많이 하려면 두 가지 조건이 필요해요. 하나는 캐릭터 커스터마이제이션이 존나 이뻐져야 되고 두 번째는 지상에서만 있어도 뭔가 할 게 있어야 돼. 네, 그 두 개가 완성되는 순간 우리나라 사람들 진짜 많이 할 거예요. 우주 안 나가도 되면 우리나라 사람 많이 해요. 우리나라 사람들 우주에 거부감이 있어서 근데 우주 안 나가도 되면 많이 합니다. 자기가 자기 이쁜 역 해가지고 행성 어디 변방 지역에 건물 하나 짓고 농사 지으면 사는 거지. 그래도 돈이 벌리고 다른 유저가 와서 막 농작물 사가고 이러면 그러면 이 사람들 우리나라 사람 게임 다 한다니까. 아무리 우주 게임이야. 농사하시는 그게 아니더라도 앞으로 만들 예정이긴 하지만 우주에 이제 동물들이라든지 적대적 생명체 이런 게 나와서 걔들을 사냥해서 걔네 부산물로 돈을 벌고 그걸로 뭘 만들고 하는 컨텐츠가 또 나오면 또 그것 때문에 우리나라 사람들 한 번 더 끌고.
Here on this sketch, I play with a very contrast values and the greenish color palette. That one is the best. Long vertical windows from the side. Let the light inside a lot. After validation of the most relevant sketch, we do a 3D blackout. As you see, this 3D blackout follows very closely to the last sketch.
직업 시스템은 없죠.
From the screenshot of the 3D
직업이 뭐
blackout,
직업
I
클래스
did a
이런
sketch
게임이
over
아니.
in the Great Town Valley.
단지 그냥 본인이 뭐 하냐가 그게
Better
본 직업이에요.
organize the coloring phase to make sure all the elements fit and will.
일본 회가 안 받치면 걔도 폭격돼야
After
된다고?
this, I like to do a
잘하는
2D
사람이지.
elevation concept. It's a good way to make sure all elements fit together and the ratio proportions between each of them. The final key shot of the social area brings it alive. Nice lighting come from the windows. Cozy mood give a soul to this social area.
근데 이 부분은 컨셉 그림보다는 실제 개발 완료된 모습 좀 보여줬으면 좋았을 거라는 생각 좀 하고 있어요. 왜냐면 아웃포스트 관련된 이야기는 올해 초부터 계속 했기 때문에 이런 디자인 것도 괜찮긴 한데 조금만 더 디테일하게 구현된 거 보여줬으면 좋았을 것 같아요. 물론 이쁘긴 합니다 지금. 이런 일일이 디자인 컨셉 디자인들은 나중에 홈페이지에 올라올 거예요, 여러분. 나올 가능성이 높습니다. 뭐야 방금 스테이크였어.
For the bedroom area, the process is the same as the social area. The sketch phase is essential. As you see
사실
here is an
스케치는
example of
누구나 그릴 수 있잖아요.
From one of
좀
those
3D
shots,
모델링 한 거
we get
보여줬으면.
a validation from art directors and CR.
근데 뭐
And
파이로도 안 나왔는데
this is
파이로
the
내부에
final
있는
one.
지상기지 실제 아직 모델링을 하진 않았겠죠.
We again go back to the painting technique. This process again is key to send us on the right.
파이로 언제 나올지는 크리스 로보츠 형한테 전화 좀 해봐야겠는데. 전화 한번 해볼까? 로보츠 형 지금 같이 시티즌콘 보고 있겠지? 내 영상 잘 찍었군 이러면서 내 얼굴 잘 나왔군 이러면서 전화 한번 걸어볼까요? 네. 로보츠 형한테 전화 한번
technology came true. Again, it's the same process where we start from manual painting to set the tone and then deep dive into color, elevation, and then the final key piece. To make the homestead a living space, the bathroom props are important to define the functionality of futuristic hygiene. Finally, let's exit by the entrance.
백종원 닮은 그 아니요. 백종원 닮은 그 로보츠가 아닙니다. 다이렉터 중에 한 명이에요. 어느 나라의 무슨 다이렉터더라? 기억이 안 나는데 팀장급 중에 하나죠. 다이렉터는 감독이라 우리나라 말로 뭐라 해야 돼? 국장급? 아무튼
match the amazing work that
앨런
is
머스크 닮은
produced
사람
during
로봇처럼.
pre-production. I
화성 갈
sincerely
거니까.
hope you will enjoy living in those homesteads in Star Citizen. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Eric. Awesome
오케이,
stuff.
잘 들었어.
Now that we've shown a lot of art and talked a lot of theory, we want to get into game and show what we've been working. We're gonna be
지금까지
showing
아트랑
you,
컨셉들 많이 보여줬고
kind of,
이제부터 실제
multiple
게임에 들어가서 어떻게 되고 있는지
and
보여주고
how it
싶대요.
changes, based off of
야,
what
열심히
you
보자.
do and
정답,
how
다시
you have
정답해.
action with
다시 앉아.
the game. So here we are waking up in 400 dying. This is the competitor to the Constellation. Doesn't compromise cargo for vehicle storage. It's faster, more agile than the smaller crew. So this is the captain's quarters, and then we'll go out and see a little more habitation and make our way to the cockpit.
본드라이프에는 풀이 있어. 화분이
So
있어.
this would be the social area that you can meet and eat and
존나 이뻐.
basically plan
내부
your next mission.
뭐야? 오진다.
And then
우와,
here
존나
we'll go to
이쁘다.
the cockpit.
야, 지갑 갖고 와. 야, 신용카드 어디 있어? 신용카드 어디 있어? 오!
So here we're over Pyro 3.
오, 파이로 3번 행성이래요.
We've come here for a mission to acquire an artifact. And you'll be making your way down to a trading
우와,
post. So
야, 조그만 팔공입니다.
to
조그만 팔공입니다.
just give you
느낌이
a
딱
quick
조그만
overview,
팔공입니다.
and then we can start talking about the planet.
Yeah, Pyro 3 is
Wow.
just a terrestrial planet. It has a
구름
very
봐.
thin,
와,
breathable
살펴라
atmosphere,
디자인.
but it's still pretty inhospitable.
나왔다. 보넷
As you can
아이
see,
외관
some of the
디자인
lightning strikes in
보소.
the clouds, but yeah,
존나
very-
이뻐.
very pretty.
뭐야 이거? 아니 색칠 안 했네? 뭐지?
So this is
아니
the
컨셉이라
first time
그런가?
we're actually seeing
아직
clouds
공개 안 해서
of,
그런가?
a terrestrial
색깔
planet.
색칠 안 해야
You know, we went through quite a few iterations of forms.
색칠 안 해야
What we ultimately ended upon was something that felt
대본 영상에서 색칠 안 했나 봐요.
quite dramatic, still believable in terms of how the wind would have shaped them.
채팅 외국 채팅창 난리 났다 지금.
It's showcasing a lot
아니
of
제 생각에는
the
옛날에
more
캐럿 공개했을
recent,
때도 캐럿의 스킬 안
tech,
입혀놨어.
that came online.
이거 나중에 입힐 예정이야.
Also, what we're seeing here is like some kind of distant thunder strikes. And what this is kind of like a prelude
와,
to
구름 뚫고 간다.
you know future
씨발.
weather features that will come on board,
구름
you
뚫고
know,
간다.
and how this will
번개
tie
친다.
to you know storms and ship handling,
오.
you know, due to the turbulence. And it's great
와,
seeing
터뷸런스도 있대요.
you know, the
그,
rain hitting
난기류도
kind of
있다.
glass here,
오,
you know, when you go
번개
through
치고.
these cloud banks.
우와, 씨발.
Also, as part of the process of shaping,
Oh.
one of the things we really wanted to do is create
오, 존나 쩔.
these kind of like these pockets in between the clouds. So you're in these cavities. So as you're flying
아바타.
through, you get
와,
glimpses
구름이
of
층별로
the
있어, 여러분.
terrain
윗구름 있고
beneath
밑에 구름 있고.
you. But you know, it feels really quite exhilarating, you know, to fly through.
와, 존나 멋있다.
Also, as well, like it's showcasing a lot of the more recent tech coming on board as well. So, you know, it's a lot of optimizations been going on. So it's way more performant than
씨발,
previously.
뒤에 터렛이 두 개 있네요.
previously was.
가베가에. 위아래로
Also,
터렛이 하나
the
있고.
level of artifacting that we're seeing
후방,
here is
후방 견제용 건가?
substantially reduced, certainly on higher spec machines.
릭스 채널에 존나
Parallax when you fly through
캐릭터 존나 좋아하는데?
these cloud
가베가이라고.
sandwiches.
A cloud sandwich?
Yes, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're the meat or the cheese of a cloud sandwich.
The cheese of a cloud sandwich. So as we get out of the cheese, another really big feature that was important for me
와.
was
금방 나오겠죠.
terrain shadowing and terrain occlusion from the clouds. So you're actually seeing, you know, these large areas of occlusion cast onto the terrain. It just adds that depth. It just adds that believability to what we're seeing in the frame. And you know, when you see like these dark overcast clouds and they're hovering above the mountains, it finally completes the frame. Especially when you see these distant rumbles of.
와, 존나 이쁘다. 아, 이거 색깔 하얀색으로 입힐 거예요, 분명히. 하얀색 색깔 좋아할 겁니다. 그럼 존나 이쁠 것 같아.
The run through. Yes, that is his name. He will be taking us down to the outpost.
흰색 입혀질
the
거예요.
goal for
오리진
us is
2의
to
흰색은 입혀질.
basically make 50 of these, whether they're inhabited or derelicts or
야,
even
근데 여러분 파이로 지금 근데 400i 공개 행사 아니고요, 여러분.
inhabited by a
파이로 3번 행성 공개 행사거든요. 여러분 지금 저 주제에 집중하세요. 주제에 집중하세요. 지금 400i 공개 행사가 아니에요. 400i는 아마 10토크 때 더 얘기할 거고 이제 파이로 3번 파이로 3번 지금 파이로 3번이 그 행성 저 아웃포스트 앞에 있네. 지상기지 있네. 지상기지 있네. 봐봐. 아, 저 한국하자. 랜딩 기어 내려가는 거 봐. 존나 예쁜데? 아, 씨발, 이 게임 플레이 언제 들어오지? 자, 그러면 우리 언제 들어오는 거지? 오, 바람, 이거, 함선 바람, 피싱 소리 들었어요? 피싱 랜딩.
Good landing. That was a good solid 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10. Jeez.
아, 앞에 있는데 안 보였던 것 같아.
Ian's a tough grader.
없을 리가 없지.
Yeah, I'd go 6 at least. No one's ever got a 6.
엘리베이터래?
Gotta watch me land, man.
오.
So here we'll go
뭐야,
down to the
오리진
technical
엘리베이터
deck.
치고는 디자인이 센시한데?
Show off the cargo.
뭐야, 아래층이야, 아래층 있었어. 자동차,
Climate controlled component areas, and then
와,
onto the
존나
gravity
예쁘네.
generator
옆에 유리창 뭐야 저거? 왜 있는 거야?
and the stairway out.
뭐 엔진, 씨. 아니, 야, 니네 400i 공개행사 10톡 때 하려는 거 아니야? 그러면 함선 발표회에서는 뭘 보여주려고 400i를 벌써 보여줘? 우와, 개쩐다. 계단 내려온다.
So you'll be able to learn more about the ship in one of the later
아,
panels.
다음에 더 알려주겠다. 문 닫히는 게 저기 있어, 버튼.
I think the team did a great job on this. I think this is one of my favorite skins. Yeah.
아, 이 스킨이래요. 페이브릿 스킨이라고 그래.
Skin, just something that felt a lot more suitable for Pyro, but you can see how it it feels suitably worn and weathered, to fit into these climates, and what we're seeing here.
파이로 봅시다. 여러분 진정하시고요. 여러분 왜 이렇게 흥분하셨어요? 진정하시고.
I think it looks great.
미사일 터렛이다.
Especially
지상 미사일 터렛이다.
contrast to what we're seeing here is like actual AI on the train, walking about, going about their business.
저번에 화제 공개됐었죠.
And is that an AA turret there?
It is.
내가요? 내가 흥분한 적 없습니다. 여러분들을 위해서 흥분한 척 목소리 톤을 좀 높였을 뿐이 흥분하지 않았어.
And allows them to
와,
go
존나
and
이쁘다.
explore or use
왜 이렇게 구름 하나 추가되고 밑에 노란색과 검정색 바닥 좋아해. 기지들 디자인 자체가 타투인 진짜 스타워드 타투인 느낌도 나고.
Various outpost modules, to the right there we've got the garage unit. You can see the infrastructure on the roof. But this large, beautiful, archway here kind of signifies, the main entrance, the primary
앞에
entrance to
경비병.
the
안녕하세요.
social module.
오,
The air looks so
와,
great.
에어력도
Fits in
달라.
with the art style beautifully.
오,
The team did a great job on this.
And then we've seen the
야,
concept
니네
art
왜
previously in the day, and
안녕하세요.
then here you can see it translated in game, and I think it absolutely looks fantastic.
이야.
The radial forms.
내가 아까 말 실수했습니다, 여러분. 왜 자꾸 컨셉 사진만 보여주고 3D 모델이라는 거 안 보여주냐 그랬잖아요. 애들은 다 만들어 놓고 그냥 앞에부터 이야기를 해준 것 뿐이구나. 미안해, 내가 참을성이 없었어. 미안하다, CIG. 내가 참을성이 없었어. 내가 미안해.
If you look back a little bit, there was a chef actually cooking. There's security guards here to make sure that they're actually protecting their investments, protecting their home from strangers, and then, but you have good rep with them.
내가 크리스 형한테 너무 많이 속아서 빌드업을 믿고 멈추래.
Other players wouldn't be able to enter into.
멈추라는데?
We also got a quick shot at the loadout that James is playing. So it's a female loadout, but it's also showing the
백팩은 3.1대 들어와요, 여러분.
which is new.
저거는 새로 보는 백팩이긴 한데 3.1대
Also
들어.
some of the new hair as well, which is rendering much nicer.
개발자들 지들만 4.0 가고 있어. 야, 우리는 3.15 나오라고 지금 외치고 있는데 지들만 4.0 하고 있어. 와, 너무한 거 아닙니까?
And for the
지르면
trading
4.0
post,
하고
we wanted to get all of the junk on the outside as well. So the player can see it as they're approaching. We wanted, as many tops as we could, and you can see it's using the new soft deck shader. So these are reacting to the planetary wind. The same force that the
바람에
tall
날리고 있는 거
grass
보이시.
and the moss on the ground is reacting to as well.
와 존나 멋있다.
Other thing with
네, 이거
the
나오면
trading
4.0이에요.
post is, like
파이로랑
Ian spoke
지방시
about
나오면
before,
4.0.
the inventory and what they'll be able to actually sell here
오,
will vary
바베큐 지역이다.
depending on where
저런 데
they're at
있으면
in the
반드시
solar
올라가
system.
봐야죠.
Are they close to a jump point where they might be coming down and using this as a chop shop, or are they in a very rural area that's, they care more about the frontier lifestyle and being able to survive versus money?
We passed the kitchen as well on the way back there. That's the local diner for this outpost. Tough crowd. Also, so in the inside as well, we wanted this kaleidoscope of colors and shapes. Like it's just literally the dealers displaying all the wares, everything they'll have outside in the
이게
open.
우리가 더 충격적인 이유가 뭐냐면요. 스탠턴 시스템은요. 조금씩 다 달라도 스탠턴 고유의 똑같은 공유하는 디자인적인 느낌이 있어요. 근데 지금 공개하고 있는 파이로 3번 행성의 지상 아웃포스트는 모든 컨셉이 달라요. 스탠턴에서 뭐 갖고 온 게 없어요. 갖고 온 게 없이 뭐 가방 같은 거 갖고 왔지. 그런 거 빼고는 모든 게 달라져. 디자인 인테리어부터 그 생긴 거부터 모든 게 달라.
Obviously going to be one is sort of a super rare
뭐야 저거?
thing that you'll hopefully be able to start finding in the galaxy.
존나 신기한데 저 뭐지?
Which is sort of, if you're familiar with the lore of Hades, was an old civilization that destroyed itself. So somehow this trader has gotten their hands on this artifact.
아티팩트라는 뭐가 함선이나 고대 유품 같은
So
거.
here we're showing one way of
연두
actually
머리
playing through
유품.
this area. It really depends on
왜 보여주다 말아.
within the
보여줘.
game and how they want to deal with you. And then what's the dealer going to do? What's the dealer going to charge you? And from there, we have different ways of actually showing this. And we can look at option 2 now.
보여줘. 아 나온다.
So here we're going to run it back a little bit and show off a different way of entering into.
여러분 이거는 이제 지들 테스트하고 있는 영상이라서 확신을 안 쓰는데 제가 확신을 안 쓰는데 제 오른쪽 위에 보시면 화면 오른쪽 위에 인공위성 총기 금지 마크 아무것도 없습니다. 그래서 내가 지금 확신이 안 쓰는데 헬멧을 안 쓰고 있어서 확신이 안 쓰긴 하는데 저기 존나 오픈 구역일 수도 있어.
People, you'd see that the barbecue's still not been eaten yet.
아직까지 확신 없어. 헬멧이 없어서 확신이 없어.
Yeah.
근데 인공위성은 헬멧 없어도 보이는 경우 없어. 작년에는 발표를 안 했습니다. 시티즌콘이 없었어요.
So with this area again,
파이로 태양이에요.
make sure
새로운
that
태양.
it's filled out with items, filled out with different things that you can interact with and possibly buy.
네, 터렛 있고 무기가 싸진다는 얘기는 그럴싸할게요. 저도 제 생각에는 여기 완전 PVP 구역일 수도 있어요. 오픈 PVP 구역일 가능성이
believable.
Quick reference to some additional traversal areas there on the right when we came in.
Welcome. Take a look. I'm sure I have what you want, and if not, I'll have something just as good.
들어보면 알겠지만 NPC 얘기하는 그 멘트도 다릅니다.
Yeah. The guys had a lot of fun dressing these areas. There's a lot of storytelling going into it.
이거는 아마
So here we decide not to pay the price.
오 씨발.
And we don't mind losing reputation with the faction, and decide that we're going to take the artifacts
훔쳐간다.
through betrayal.
이런 플레이 가능하구나. 안 사고 훔쳐가는 플레이. NPC 죽여버리고 훔쳐가는 플레이 가능하구나.
So here we've got different routes for the players to enjoy and
우와,
to use
개쩐다.
to to flank and also navigate around. So each area will have different secondary and tertiary routes of navigation.
FPS 경유도 오고 있어.
James was really just trying to scare him there versus actually kill him.
That was intentional. Good shot, James.
You could also, if you notice real quick, there was the civilians are actually cowering as opposed to.
지금 일반 민간인은 머리 숙이고 무서워하고 있고 경비병은 적극적으로 지금 할로 감사합니다. 지금 쏘고 있어요. DF, DOD 팔로우 손 들고 있어. 살려줘, 살려줘.
You know, does their conscience get better of them?
씨발.
I think James made the right
여기는
choice.
범죄를 안 먹으니까
He was nice.
파이로니까 이미 지방이 다 죽여버리면 어떻게 되는 거지?
One of the things when we was playtesting this a lot is when you see the
와 존나 스페이스 로맨스 게임이다. 이게 스페이스 로맨 게임.
like that, it's fantastic to see. It feels really great. Just seeing the base start to wake up to
디싱크는
you
어쩔 수
and,
없어요.
actually trying to exfiltrate.
디싱크가 있다는 것 자체가 여러분 이게 단순한 데모 영상이 아니라는 겁니다.
You know, combat
이게
stress,
실제
but
게임 영상이라는 거죠.
that yellow
디싱크가
grass
있다는 것 자체가
just looks fantastic.
진짜 게임 영상이라는 데모를 위한 데모 영상이 아니고.
That's how I play.
So here, James just wants to get out real quick.
이제 우주전 보여줘. 뭐야 새로. 아 400알 존나 이쁘다. 아 이거는 안 살 수가 없다. 미안해. 아 내 지갑 미안해. 아 나 통장 너무 돈 없는데 어쩔 수가 없다. 안 살 수가 없다.
So as we slightly hinted to in the first walkthrough, this is where the AA turrets will come alive.
외모가 못생겼다고요? 이거 이쁜데?
Basically,
검정 거는 스킨이라 그래. 오 미사일 쏜다.
as James isn't,
검정 거는 스킨이래요.
countermeasures, then they'll take you down.
어?
So what we saw there was
뭐야?
the player went in, and based off their actions, the faction changed against them, and then basically became
처음
very
등장하자마자
So in this last
임무
playthrough, what I'll
실패하고
show you is if
폭사해.
the faction is already against you from the very beginning, and what are different ways that you can go about it.
안전이요.
So here we are in our last walkthrough.
다른 방식의 접근 방법.
Since you're all by yourself, we wanted to show the player take a stealthy routes versus if you were with friends, you could go in guns blazing. But this
처음부터 다
allows
죽여버리고
the
하는
player
거고.
to come in, access the outpost from a different side than what we've shown. It also
저격총도 이거
allows
스코프
them
처음
to
보는. 이런
clock all
스코프
the
있어.
AI and see how they want to approach the problem and see what other secondary or tertiary routes would be open to them, either via the ladder or maybe a possible door.
갑자기 V 고스트 있고. 이제 전기총인 것 같은데요? 전기총? 레이저총 아닌 것 같아. 레이저총이네. 씨발. 헤드샷?
Good night. That was a great shot. Also, one thing we did as well, as Todd said, you know, we
저 이거 우주
changed
게임
the time
아닌가요?
of
예,
day.
우주 게임 맞습니다.
The wind is slightly stronger, so you'll see the gorgeous yellow grass blowing just a little bit more intense than before. Also, what we're seeing here is like something to imply at the frontier living. Maybe the growing crops and vegetables out here, but it also gives a kind of like a soft cover approach to the perimeter
게임
of the
아닌데
base.
재밌네.
Nice.
메타버스죠.
Also, with it being a different time of
얘들이
day,
만든
this
영화
allows
메타버스.
us to show
우주
off
그러니까
the AI,
우리 21세기
having their
인류가
24-hour schedules so that they
30세기에
can
그냥
be
체험을 좀 해봐라. 그러려고 만든
when you
거예요.
approach it. So if you approach it at night or you approach it during the
도깨비.
morning, you know they'll be doing different things. Whatever is
21세기 인류 죽기 전에 30세기 한번 체험만 해보고 죽어? 뭐 이런 거 같아. 오 잠입한다 잠입.
That door's locked, so there's no going through that way.
그 정도까지 디테일이 없습니다.
But what James does actually see here as he's scouting out the next AI is, you know, just checking the roof line. But as I said previously, we wanted as many kind of like views in to the base as possible. just so the
뭐라
player
그랬다.
can continue to keep
걸렸나 봐.
context of what's inside.
오.
But also when
머가리.
you're inside, it allows the player to have context of where they're at within the actual outpost. And that was a great shot.
The AI fell beautifully on the already called out beautiful yellow grass and moss.
야, 근데 400i가 진짜일
Also,
줄이야.
as James is looking back, what he's
근데
doing is
하드
actually
커뮤니티에 400i
making
루머가
a
많아가지고
mental map of possible routes,
사람들이
possible
그
advanced traversal routes
애초에
on
그냥
top of the
쿨하게
outpost.
공개한 것 같아. CIG가 감춰놓고 공개 안 했을 수도 있잖아요. 나중에 그 함선 발표해야 할 때 공개했을 수도 있는데 하드 커뮤니티에서 많이 이야기를 하다 보니까 그냥 봐라 얘들아 이렇게 공개한 느낌이.
And we saw the dealer there in the bedroom, just end of the day.
저는
So
오늘
with
사실
each
1시까지만 보고
outpost,
잘라
there'll
했다고요.
be different routes that will be open to the
이미
player
2시 다
or
돼가는데.
closed to the player. So some of them might have ladders on the outside, some of them might not. Some of them might have basically ways to get into
AI
the
관련된
doors,
문제는
other ones
아직까지
won't,
개발하고 있을
but
거예요.
this is just one version of many possibilities. So here, the player will take a secondary route of navigation all the way up to the roof, and then from here, this allows them to be able to check out any of the AI, also be able to look at any of the interactables in the future. If you got a good reputation, maybe you need to go and fix different items on the roof, or if you are there for nefarious means,
호다라이프
maybe you
셌어요.
want to take out
원래
the
좀
power, and which will
게다가 머리에 헬멧을 안 쓰고
turn,
있잖아요.
kill the
그러니까 원
AA
헤드샷.
turrets, or
오.
will turn off the lights in the outpost. So it allows the player to interact with different items and then basically create a nice little sandbox.
너도 나도
for
한
play.
방, 뚝배기 한 방.
So here you can see one of those interactables as well as the AI.
And just behind these interactables, like we're seeing these kind of archways. Like right now, these are just kind of empty, and to just illustrate like a guard point.
스타시티즌 투자.
In the future,
그런
these
무서운
could be
얘기하지 마.
maybe customizable, or they could contain like
오.
an AA turret. Like
야,
we
걔는
saw on
정비사잖아.
Demo 1, or
아, 불쌍한
could
정비
contain
친.
like
정비사
cargo
죽었어.
storage. Basically, we tried to design
어?
something that was as flexible as possible.
씨발, 설마 옷 갈아입냐?
So here we're showing off the looting system as well as the
NPC 루팅하고 있어.
as well as the inventory system. So this will be shipping in 315.
멀티툴
This allows
잠깐.
bodies to
멀티툴 루팅.
be able to be interacted with and take off the items associated with it. Also, with this change, you will no longer
배그하고
have
있어.
global inventory, so you can't be pulling off weapons
어쌔신
that you
크리드
didn't take
겸
with you
배그 겸
to
타르코프 겸
this location.
겸 이 게임 무슨 게임이냐고요?
everything
여러분 우주 게임입니다.
regarding
기억하세요.
what you carry
이거
is
우주
what
게임이에요.
you
우주
what you have,
우주
and,
여행하는 게임입니다.
so it really makes the players think about how they want to approach the problem, and then also encourages them to look around and see if the designers and
아,
have
그래.
placed different
게임같이
things
플레이가
that they can
가능한
interact with
현실이에요, 여러분.
are
가상현실이.
used to help
말을 잡는.
get past a certain route or a certain way that they maybe didn't bring with them.
And we'll also be
아, 나
including
오줌
the,
마려운데 화장실에 못 가고 있어. 너무
the
재밌어.
knickknacks app
어떡하지?
for your Mobiglass. So now that
어?
you aren't carrying everything on your body and it's not
오,
sort of
이런 플레이?
universal inventory, you'll be able to consult this app to see kind of where stuff is being stored and keep it better organized and stuff like that.
트랙터 빔 원래 있었죠? 근데 이거
So
타고
here,
올라와서 오,
this allows the
야,
player to
우와, 와 이거 생각 못했다. 사다리 탈 거라 생각했지 이거 생각 못했다.
just gives them a little bit more
와,
interaction,
이런
and
플레이.
then allows them to go on to what I would consider a tertiary route, versus climbing up the ladder
와,
and,
이거 생각 못했네.
possibly having to deal with the AI or them being spotted by them.
제달 푸시의 전설이라고. 넉다운이구나. 포! 이건 뭐야 한 대 더 때렸어.
Also, I think the team did a great job on the planet as well as the outposts.
기적적인 시야.
These are really fun to play
NPC
and
기적 시야는
sneak
어쩔 수가
around in, and you know, allows for many possible, you know, ways of attacking the same problem.
야 이거를 일일이 이런 식으로
What we're seeing here is like
구현했다고
James
자체가
getting up
씨발 이거 미친 거
onto
아니야?
through one of these like rooftop storage modules. and
그러니까
it's
지상
given, like,
기지를
the
디자인할
highest point of the
때
base. So from here,
이미 디자인의 고려
actually,
요소가
you know, make some of
유저가
the most informed decisions
몰래
on
들어갈 수 있냐
how
없냐 이게
to
유료.
approach the next problem. You know, we're seeing this
잠깐만
guard
내가
routine
생각한
here.
그거 아니지? 잠깐만 내가 생각한 그거 아니지?
And then
야
ultimately, you know, throwing an item to distract the
어?
guard.
저게 된다고? 스타시티즌에서? 야 오스페이시 크리드가
Allows them to go and access new areas.
저게 된다고?
It's a behavior that we're still working out, but at least we're seeing like the first
야
iterations
생각도
of
못했다 좀.
be able to continue to optimize it as well as make sure that the behavior is working properly.
So we just saw that for the first time. It's like the first rooftop airlock hatch. So previously, route in and out if the outside wasn't pressurized, like we wouldn't have this option. But now through that rooftop airlock, you can cycle and then you know infiltrate through the roof. And also what we're seeing here is you know potentially scouting out an advanced
아니 이거
traversal
뭐
up
단독
into the
미션 이런 건가?
rafters. You know,
아니
get on
너무
top of some
맵을
infrastructure and
너무 재밌게
get in like this
만들어놨잖아.
overview as we go into the garage module.
So here, this is
뭐야?
placeholder, but it gives you it gives you an idea of, you know, we want to have different interactables, different loot boxes laid out around the location. So if the players explore,
파밍
they'll be
진짜
rewarded.
오지네.
You know, we want to encourage them looking in every nook and cranny and enjoying, you know, what the outpost has for them.
진짜 어크다 어크. 아 스크다 스크.
And one of the things that's
내가
interesting
쇼트로
is these
어쌔신
garages
크리드
won't be
어쌔신 시티즌
vehicle
찍은
spawn
게
points, so
농담이
it's not like a
아니고
big kind of like pad in the
진짜였어.
middle, but
나는
it's
농담으로
more
찍은
like, you know,
거였거든.
if you want to
나중에 실내 도약
kind of have
나오겠다.
your vehicle there, you
이러다가
can
진짜
drive it in
실내
and
도약
park
나올
it.
듯.
So here you can see a variety of vehicles just laid out how the player would have just parked them. Just gives a much more believable and realistic design.
와 개쩌네 진짜 게임. 아 게임 아니지. 아 저 게임이라 그냥.
So again, we're just encouraging
못 보는 거 이해해 줍시다 여러분.
different
거기까지 생각하면 게임
different
안 나와요. 게임 안 나옵니다
players to go
그러면.
and see. Over to the left, back there, there was a possible way of going into the floorboards or going underneath the
드풀에
outpost.
ROC DS에.
Again, those
야
would be
경비병이야.
opened
죽이지 말고
up
너
or
뭐야 한
closed
명 더 있네
off
왼쪽에.
based off of, you know, just how we want to build the outpost. Not every one will be built the same.
다행히 피
Our
튀기는 이펙트는
philosophy
없네요.
for
19금을 의식했나
these
보네.
are to make sure that each one of them feels unique, and
헬멧
this
쓰고
is just
있네.
one way of us customizing it and making each one feel
멀티투 더 훔치는
different.
거야?
And so
멀티투
the
더
player
돼.
won't always be
땡큐
used to the same
멀티투.
routes. So here, again, we're using the inventory system. We allow the players to go in, and if you take out
한창도
the
장전 안 돼.
they might
저거도
have
저때도 여전하네.
different tools or
저거
different
대부분
notes
호상에도
or
여전하네.
different items that
한창
you'll need
저장자 안
in
되는
order
건
to solve
저것도 여전.
your mission.
두 번 해야 되는 거는 또 똑같네.
Interestingly, when we was designing these spaces, we knew we wanted these internal airlocks, but we knew we needed some sort of like view, like porthole on them, just so before you commit through, before you cycle, you know, you can just double check to see if there's any bad guys on the other side.
So we got some ragdoll bugs. I guess it wouldn't be a CitizenCon without any sort of issues or bugs.
이게 진짜 언제 나오나? 이거 이 게임에서 계속 구현하려다가 계속 실패하고 있는 거죠. 계속 딜레이하고 있는 것 중에 하나거든요.
So here, like previously, the players being, you know, on the roof, they've come down through the main section of the outpost. But here, what the players doing is they go into the underfloor section. So these aren't vents, but they're more like subfloors. So they're meant to feel very dark, very minimal, but you're actually seeing the foundations of these outposts. So inside here, the player will need to kind of work out how to navigate through them. It's very much like a torch-based experience, you know. And then within here,
만들 거 왜 지들만 하냐고요? 내 말이요.
work out
왜 지들만 할까요?
roughly where they are in relation to the to what's upstairs.
왜
And when you
지들만
see
하냐고.
here, like this light bleeding down through.
아 저기 가랑이다 쏘고 싶다. 한번 쏴보지.
Okay, that's where that AI
저 틈 사이로 가랭이 노리고 한번 쏴보지.
underneath that main social space. So if you think back, like that was that guard in the beginning, just next to the kitchen counter. But you know, we've intentionally made these spaces not necessarily like very easy to navigate because you know.
근데 여러분 이런 미션이 파이로가 나오고요. 이런 미션이 나왔을 때요. 제가 100% 예견할 수 있는데 여러분들 중에 90%는 99%는 함선으로 성공해서 NPC 다 조져버리고 한 10명에서 20명에서 내려가지고 우르르 들어가서 다 죽여버립니다. 자, 팩트. 자, 팩트. 여러분 이렇게 플레이 안 합니다. 이거는 데모 영상이라는 이렇게 플레이하는.
Just the claustrophobic feel of it. And
일단 A2에 하나 떨고
the addition
시작하겠죠.
of
이제.
possible secondary or more advanced navigation, so either going into prone or just going full crouch.
So here we come out.
아우 불쌍해. 아우 불쌍해.
On the opposite side of the outpost from where we just were.
It's a good ragdoll.
And now the body drag. In the shower.
뭐야? 어?
So here, this is just
오빠
a
분이
different
루틴이래?
wrapper on a loot box. In this case, it's a hamper. And so the player will be able to
뭐야 위장하는 거야?
really change outfits and adjust the way that they look so that they can walk around the outpost and not be noticed. There will be kind of a certain time limit associated with it. We still need to work out the details on how all that will work, but the goal is to give them a little bit of leeway, and so if you look the part, maybe you're not scrutinized as much, and the AI won't
모른 척합니다.
won't notice you as quickly.
아, 아까 못 들어가게 손 막은 거구나. 아, 거지역에 들어온 거네. 잠입해가지고.
So here we can see back into the social space, but this time on the other side. And then this door will lead directly into the habitation room that we saw previously on the outside.
진짜 암살이네. 아니 히트맨 만들었는데? 어큰 줄 알았더니 히트맨이었어.
Fun ragdoll
아,
physics.
히트맨이었네 이거.
That was a great one.
So here, the player decided to take the dealer out instead of actually figuring out how they could open up the safe. So they're going to have to look around the room. They're going to have to interact with the body and possibly see, you know, is there a way for them to actually open it. In other cases, maybe the safe will be hackable in the future, and in some cases it won't be, and then you'll need to figure out a different way of actually opening it.
Oh shit. 여러분들 잠깐만 빨리 화장실 좀 갔다 올게요.
So here we
중요한
spot a little clue.
중요한 정보 있으면 빨리 얘기해줘요.
A little note, and you'll notice the what's fun is like the name on here. If you look back and see the some of the AI being taken out, you may notice some names. So here's the clue for the player. But one of the coolest things for me here is the player is holding an item with the clue, and while holding the item they can seamlessly interact with another item to solve a puzzle. That's awesome.
And then here we got a little bug. The player was able to acquire the artifact, and then will be able to do whatever they want with it, either sell it or be able to use it somehow in a future mission.
One of the things that was really exciting about watching this kind of back to back to back is finally getting to see that freedom of choice. And it's like, it's really, really, I mean, again, our locations are always spectacular and beautiful, but now like having that sort of striking that balance.
그래, 미국 햅말살 발사기가 0000000이었는데 아무 1, 2, 3, 4 있을 수 있지. 1QW, 1Q, 2W, 3이 다 할 수도 있어.
Stealth and combat thing. It's super cool to see. So after seeing the demo played through, 3 different ways, it was a huge team effort.
와,
so
존나 장난.
everyone
그래서
that
파이로
worked,
언제 나오죠?
on the project, on this
그래서
product
언제
that we
나오죠?
wanted to show, we want to say a big thank you, big shout out, because we're just presenting it. It's the people that did a lot of the hard work that should be represented. And speaking of people doing hard work, now's a good chance to throw it over to Eddie and Joel. And they're going to tell you a little bit more about the how we built that outpost that we just saw.
이제 마지막으로 이 아웃포스트 어떻게 만드는지 좀 보여주겠네. 근데 제가 생각했던 뭐 외계인이라든지 외계 생명체 같은 거는 이야기가 없네요 이번에.
My name's Joel Azapani, and I'm Senior Environment Artist 2 for the EU Sandbox team.
So after the initial concept is done and rounds of feedback have been iterated on, we move into pre-production. This phase allows us to spend some time testing the concepts for in-game viability. Translation from concept to game isn't always one-to-one, and during pre-production we'll get rough versions of the concept meshes into game and spend time making sure that they'll work practically. The art direction can also change at this stage, so we use this phase to kind of explore creatively as well, and concept art is a fantastic jumping off point for sparking ideas.
라베가이는 최소 3.15엔 나와요. 3.14 때 막바로 그걸 안 해줄 수는 있는데 3.15 패치되자마자 나올 가능성이 높아요.
Tools and methods needed to execute the concept in game. Some things translate well, some things don't. It's important to figure all this out before going full steam ahead with the entire team. One of the great assets on the Sandbox team is we have a lot of people who are passionate about concept and design, which means when translating from concept to production environment, it's very easy to expand on the concept art with the art styles of the colonial.
나는 이렇게 컨셉 디자인 보여줄 때 이 새끼들 디자인만 존나 열심히 해놓고 만든 거 아직 없구나 그 생각을 했는데 죄송합니다.
Out there on ArtCorp that turns out these
station kits.
Stations can be mass produced. Colonial outposts are more personal, more handcrafted.
이미 다 만들었다 이러니까 내 말이 나 컨셉 아트만 보여주고 끝난 줄 알았는데 이미 다 만들었어. 이미 다 해놓은 거야.
Materials were one of the first things we tackled, and we started off by developing the idea of how the inhabitants would have built these structures and what materials
이제 카톡 보내고 있습니다. 프리스한 카톡 있거든요. I'm sorry, brother. I didn't believe you. Sorry.
And give you an idea how, functionally, they constructed them.
One of the biggest challenges with the new outposts is how we introduce variation between each location the player will visit. Building each as a bespoke set of buildings is impossible, as we want hundreds, if not thousands, of outposts in the game eventually. The modular approach we've developed really evolved out of our previous work on space station interiors, but with a few key improvements. This starts at the macro level, where on the planet's outposts are placed, how the local conditions affect your time there, then what kind of buildings an outpost has and how they're laid out, all the way down to the ability to independently swap out an underfloor layout in a single building of that outpost. We'll have various types of modules, from large standalone modules like warehouses or ore extractors, a singular function,
힘들봐.
all the way
존나
down to
이쁜 거
small
많아.
room modules that can be connected together in different ways to form a complete headquarters building. After pre-production was finished, we had a list of the room module
오본도
types
$242.
first. For the headquarters building,
프리오더 일반 $275.
with different room modules that can be
아,
attached
당연히
to
신규
extend
공개니까
the structure.
ATI죠.
The room modules will serve different functions in the base, with various
오본도
gameplay
기준.
systems linking one to another.
일반은 ATI 아니에요. 일반은 6개월이고요.
As content creators for the outpost, we need a new system to build, edit, and manage the library.
존나 싸다. 근데 생각보다 우리 나 $300 예상했는데 생각보다
It
싸네.
allows us to intuitively create a location template directly on the surface of the planet. Not only this, but headquarter buildings can be snapped together directly within the tool, or with an intuitive user interface. One of the other major innovations with the Planet Tech has been the ability to modify the terrain mesh and flatten areas of terrain. Previously, we were at the mercy of the terrain when it came to designing our buildings, which is why our outposts had to be
이거는 컨시어지 버전인데 스킨까지 포함되어 있는 거예요.
Now,
프리오더
we
플러스
can build much more
프리미엄
natural buildings with
페인트에서
walls and
저는
entrances
같은
connected directly to the planet's surface. And also, we can place these buildings in a much wider range of locations, We believe our new
3.16
outposts
때
inject
고정된다는 얘기죠.
refreshing new location experience into Star Citizen.
LTI가 유저거리가 되는 게 아니고 그냥 현금으로 산 아이템은 선물이 돼요.
The new art style, the focus from
결제하겠습니다.
design on
여러분.
gameplay and the flexible modular
잠시만요.
approach to
이거
local
개인정보
construction
보여가지고.
will allow us as developers and you as players be part of creating a wider variety of rich and
생각보다
satisfying
싸다.
experiences for
진짜
every
농담
outpost the
아니고
player comes across.
난 당연히 300 넘을 거라 생각했거든.
Okay,
이렇게
cool.
쌀 거라
Thank you,
생각
Eddie.
못했어.
Thank
아니
you,
씨발
Joel. That was
242기가 싸다가 나
And moving on, we're actually going to
내가
talk to Corey
정신머리 못
now,
찾았구나.
who is going to give us kind of a deep dive into the creation of the artifact, which is actually kind of our first little glimpse of the Hadesian culture from Hades system.
Thanks, guys. I'm Corey Bamford, lead props artist at Cloud Imperium Games. I'm here today specifically to talk about the Hadesian artifact that you'll see in the walkthrough.
LTI 바베가이
So we knew early on we wanted some sort
원래
of MacGuffin
하얀색이고
for the walkthrough.
검정 스킨까지
We originally
같이
had a few ideas of what that could be. Originally, it was either going to be a
페인트
tablet
두 개인데요?
fragment, a
신기 다른
sculpture,
페인트 또 있나?
or a Hadesian artifact.
페인트
So
뭐
initially, the concept team explored a variety of ideas. We used a lot of
페인트
reference
쪽에
for
있나?
existing alien artifacts in the game, as well as reference from the
다른
real world.
다른 거 눈에 안
You
들어온다
know, lots
사람들이.
of
나도 안
tomes
들어온.
and ancient kind of
바베가이
Egyptian
페인트
stuff
따로
as
있나?
well. Just all sorts of really reference, just to get a general idea. We knew we wanted to integrate some form of ancient power or technology into the asset.
바베가이 브로
We also knew we wanted
나중에
to
여러분
have some sort of symbolism.
발표 끝나면
So once the
바베가이
concept
브로셔
team
같이
iterated
읽어볼게요.
further on these
스펙이라든지
ideas,
이런 거 봐야
we then
되니까
presented
나
those
지금
to Chris,
나
and we narrowed down
나
the
지금
selection of assets
스펙도 안 보고
until we had
아무것도 안 보고 그냥
that everyone
질렀어.
was happy
나
with.
지금
So
나
once
지금
we
약간
had this
정신머리
asset
나갔나
in
봐.
mind, it then came down
나
to
지금
turning that from a concept into a production asset, and that's where the props
스펙을
team
아예
comes
보지
in.
않았어.
When a prop artist gets a concept like this, immediately the wheels in their head start
나를
turning,
약간 살짝
and they're trying to figure
돌았네.
out the best way to implement it in our game engine. They need
나
to
지금
find
스펙을
solutions
보지
within
않았어.
the engine to
아니
achieve the
함선이
visual
무슨
target of
함선인지
the
모르고
concept.
샀어.
Obviously, it's not as
이거
simple as just taking the
페인트는
concept and replicating it. We have to think
아
about
이거 있구나.
the shaders. We have to
아
think
페인트
about
존나 많네.
performance. Our job really is to find a solution within the game engine to achieve the visual target of the concept. Once we've figured out a strategy for achieving the look, we begin to actually make the content. So for the artifact, for example, we knew that it needed to be split into 3 segments and they needed to fit
페인트는
together.
크리딧을 살짝
The
보고.
first thing we do is get a placeholder into the game for the design team to actually
자,
implement
여러분
as an entity.
시티즌콘
We
보고
also
계세요?
then figure out how the scale actually works in the player's hand and when they inspect it. For the artifact, there was a bit of back and forth between the size because we wanted to get a balance between it having prominence and also being easily carryable.
자,
After we figured out the
자
size of the asset,
인정합니다.
we then need to actually break
바베가이
down how we're going to
3파인트
make
팩
it.
샀고요.
So the first thing we really get into is the
그리고
materials. We know that this
그
asset
프림
is made of a few different
펜루브라
materials.
페인트 들어가
Firstly, we
있는
have the stone with the complicated glowing
컨시어지
pattern.
버전
We also have these large copper
샀습니다.
structures and some smaller, thinner metal structures as well. For this asset, we knew we'd need to use
완벽한-
unique textures just because of the amount of detail we wanted to achieve. One of the biggest challenges we had was making sure that the stone looked really good. To create the stone, we started with some scan data of rocks and concrete, as well as some mesh data like curvature.
자, 여러분,
We also use a lot of procedural
이게
noises from
오늘
Designer just to add some
오늘
variety.
이렇게 이게 오늘
Using
여러분의
the fact that
마지막
jumping
결제라고
off point for the rest
생각했겠죠?
of the texture maps. It's quite a
그랬는데
nice logical and
삼성
physical
공개
way of doing
행사
things. It took
때
quite a lot of iteration
또
to
뭔가
get
새로운 게
it
나오는
was
거지.
definitely a group effort. The glow was probably the trickiest part of this asset. We ended up actually using a shader some of you might remember from the Vandal Driller trailer. We created the iconography
이게 끝일
using
줄
a
알았지?
texture mask, and then the circles were derived from some cells within Substance Designer. We took these
수시 하루
cells,
이틀 합니까?
quantized
수시
them,
하루 이틀 합니까,
and
여러분?
then got the edges of that
여러분 이 끝인 줄
quantization
알았죠?
to create rings.
사실 더 있음.
And then we used a procedural mask as well as some hand-painted textures to mask out that glow. Once we were happy
이거
with
다음
the
채널
texture,
다음
we
방송
multiplied that
다음
onto the height
주제가
map, which is
함선입니다.
used to drive the glow
2시 15분에 시작해요.
The glow effect has 3 texture inputs that we need to create. There's an animated glow map, which is sort of used to drive
끝이
the background
아니었다.
effect of the glow. There's also a gradient, which colors that map. Finally, we have the actual pulse itself, which is the texture map that pulses across the asset. Next up is the bronze.
여러분,
This was actually pretty straightforward.
나
to achieve.
지금
We didn't
매우
need any
큰
fancy
소식을
shaders,
하나 갖고 왔습니다.
just a standard set of unique
매우 큰 소식을 갖고
We
왔습니다.
wanted to get lots of nice
엄청 큰
scratches
소식이에요.
imaging on the bronze.
엄청 큰
And
소식이에요.
in
지금
the concept,
바로
there was also this
적어드릴게요.
nice effect on the edges where the metal got darker. So we wanted to add that in as well, just to give it a more distinctive feel. Once we were happy with the visual look of the asset and engine, it then was just a case of wrapping it up. We needed to create LOD meshes for the object, as well as collision proxies. As you can tell, quite a lot of work goes into these hero assets. So that was a little bit of exploration into how we created the Hadesian artifact for the walkthrough. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me talk about it, and enjoy the rest of the show.
So we wanted to thank you for your time. We wanted to introduce Pyro and show all the hard work that all the team's been working on and working.
아, 우리아 시간은 일요일이겠다.
The team is putting
우리아 시간은 일요일.
a lot of hard
얘네
work
시간으로
in
내일이니까.
building
우리아
the
시간으로
Pyro
일요일.
system, building
월요일인가?
the AI,
일요일인가?
building
정확히 모르겠는데 아무튼 내일.
the planets, the worlds that you'll go and
글자가 너무
explore. So Pyro will be ready when server meshing is, and it will be coming out with Star Citizen Alpha 4.0. So on behalf of myself, I want to thank Dave and Ian and yourselves for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the panel, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Digital Citizen Con.
예, 400아 이미 샀습니다. 이미 샀습니다. 웨이브 1은 오픈 PTU인데 컨시어지거나 아니면 유료 구독자들만 들어갈 수 있는 오픈 PTU에 이제 내일 이제 저랑 같이 A2 타실 거고요. 그리고 400i 타실 거고요. 박수 쳐 여러분. 첫 공개 끝났어. 첫 영상 끝났어. 박수 쳐. 보통 신규 공개 한 편은 한 10일, 일주일 10일 정도 계속 판매해요. 아르고몰 장난감? 와 존나 이쁘다. 이거 뭐야? 여기 어디야? 여기 파이로야? 컨시어지 아니고 유료 구독자 있죠? 10달러나 20달러 주고 구독하는 거 있죠? 그거 구독하시면 들어갈 수 있어요. 저거는 무슨 게임이에요? 게임 아닌데요? 생각보다 너무 싸게 나왔어. 맞아, 그거 나도 인정. 아베가이 판매 중.